I'm excited this is happening. It's been quite a long time trying to put this together. I appreciate you sitting down with me.
Oh, it's great to come out to Vegas.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's been like 6 years since you've been here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, time is a weird thing when you get older. Something that seems like 2 years is really 6. So since it seems like 2 years, I'll tell you 6.
That's fair. Yeah, you were like, we're trying to schedule this, and you're like, just give me 2 days notice. I'm like, okay, that must be like a retiring thing, 2 days notice. I'm like, okay, we'll see if we can make it work.
Well, I'm a surfer, so it's hard to make any schedules because there might be waves.
Got it. Yeah. How did that end up working out? Did the waves end up coming, or did you?
I saw waves this morning.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And you're
I
still
looked
here.
And go, well, yeah. I mean, I told you I was going to be here, so
Yeah. Well,
I'm psyched to be here.
Cool.
There'll be more waves
for sure. Yeah. When did you kind of like stumble upon the show, or when did you catch wind of the show's existence? And
Tanner, you interviewed Tanner, and I listened to that,
Cool.
which was great.
Cool. Yeah, he's been I'm grateful. He's been super stoked on the show, and yeah, he definitely was like, you should get Randy on the show. So I appreciate him making that connection.
He said you were the best interviewer he's had.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, it's cool. I've definitely gotten a lot of feedback from people, and just trying to bring something different to the climbing space. So get a little deeper, just be more real, more human, less spray, So psyched to have you here. So you've done several interviews. I've listened to pretty much all of them, the Nugget, Enormocast. I've looked back at that podcast, and it's been quite a long time since you sat down with Chris Glues.
I was one of his, I wouldn't say the original guy, but I was one of the original, in the original amount of interviews that he did. So yeah, he was I think in a motel room outside of a trade show just a long time ago. It was real scrappy, and podcasts were something that no one had really heard about. And Chris latched onto that pretty quickly.
For sure. I always call him like the Joe Rogan of climbing podcasts.
Yeah. I mean, it's a lot of work, and he's had a lot of persistence. He's kept doing it. So he's done really well.
For sure. Yeah. He was definitely, I've listened to his podcast from the very beginning, and had no idea that I would end up kind of doing a podcast myself, but he was definitely influential and just inspirational during those earlier years of just hearing climbing stories and getting to hear the history and everything. So it was really cool what he's done.
A friend of mine said, Randy, you should start your own podcast. And I said, oh man, that's way too much work.
Yeah. I think a lot of people don't understand all the work that goes into it. There's so many podcasts that are popping up left and right. I think there's like, what was the statistic? I think there's like 1,000 a day or some ridiculous amount of podcasts that start every day. But yeah, it's definitely interesting to watch, even in the climbing space, watch certain podcasts pop up, and then all of a sudden they just stop posting and then they disappear. So yeah, consistency is definitely huge.
It's kind of like social media in a way. Or YouTube, where you have to keep doing it, but not really, because you're actually capturing sort of some history and things that don't necessarily have to be something you tune into every day. You can go back and hear about someone's adventures, and there's still, things that have happened in the past that are significant.
Yeah, I do like the timeless nature of podcasts. You can always, and even like when I'm older and look back, it's like almost this legacy in a way of just conversations and experiences that I've had and stories that we've talked about and told. And you can, forever, you can go back, as long as the internet's still a thing, you can go back and revisit those things. It's pretty cool. Yeah. You have a quote here. You said, free climbing is just a way to fill the gap between big wall seasons. What did you get out of big wall climbing and A climbing that free climbing didn't give to you?
Well, I was always inspired by things that meant something to me, not just, so bouldering was at the very bottom of the list. There was no purpose for me for bouldering other than getting stronger and hanging out with my friends and being entertained on, in the afternoon. But for me, climbing was big objects like El Capitan, Half Dome, and ultimately the Himalayas, Gasherbrum 4, K2, things like that. And so, we don't have Gasherbrum 4 K2 in our backyard, but we have Yosemite in our backyard. So that's where I started. And I felt like I took to big wall climbing right away. It just was easy for me. Not necessarily easy, but my mind was wrapping around it really fast. It's just a system of when you're putting in a belay, you're layering ropes and knots on top of each other, right? And it's just sort of, if you can understand those systems and not get them all screwed up and see how it all works together, then you can big wall climb pretty well, pretty soon. And I felt like I was natural at that. So I was natural at A climbing, natural at big wall systems. And therefore I ended up doing the Pacific Ocean Wall with Dale Bard in 78. And I was only 18 at the time. And that was, the second hardest big wall in the world, basically. And so, and from there was a lot of momentum with that. Eventually I wanted to work more on free climbing. So like you said, it was just something to take in between big walls. But, free climbing was not natural for me. It was harder. I had to work on it really hard.
How much of that was just because like big wall climbing was just the scene back in that time? Like, was free climbing kind of like becoming was it like a baby where people were starting to kind of branch off and start to spend their time free climbing, and big walling was kind of like the main focus of the culture?
Big wall was the main focus. Absolutely. Hard routes were being done back then. Free climbing was a thing. It was impressive. It was well respected, and there were people doing it who were really good at it. But the big wall scene was really Yosemite. I mean, you don't go to Yosemite and just hang out at Camp 4 boulders. At least I didn't. You're surrounded by these massive monoliths, and so why would you do that?
Yeah, exactly.
It's different now.
I mean, there's a lot more people, and I'm kind of happy it's diversified and everybody doesn't want to do the same thing because there's not enough rock, at least in these busier areas.
Yeah, it's great. I love the diversity in climbing.
Yeah. Now you kind of mentioned Gasherin 4 and your trip that you ended up doing with the Himalaya. Was that like your focus early on? Was like because for me, like when I started climbing, I saw like a picture of Cerro Torre, and I was just like, that's what I want to do. Was it similar in that way, where you were captured by the essence of mountaineering and big walling, and the stuff you were doing as a climber was ultimately for that goal?
Yes, absolutely. I wanted to be a high altitude mountaineer and climb the biggest walls, biggest faces, highest mountains in the world. That's what I wanted to do.
Now, I want, I think this is something that people don't really know about you. Again, I think at least, again, I'm generalizing here, but I would say you are most recognized by the general public for your free climbing kind of lore, your 514 first ascents, your career as a professional climber. But I found it interesting to learn about this passion that you had early on with the Himalayan climbing. And so, in the podcasts that people have done with you, it's always kind of, they brush over it. It's always like this, oh, that's cool. Let's talk about something else. So I want to actually hear the stories. I want to actually have you like break down like what the trip was like, what you did, and ultimately kind of use that story to reframe how it changed your focus after you got back.
When I was a young climber, I looked up to Boardman, Tasker, Bonington, all these guys who were these badass mountaineers. To me, that seemed like the ultimate. And Yosemite was just a stepping stone. It was the thing we had near us. And so I got good at Yosemite climbing, good at big wall climbing. And by virtue of that, I was invited on the 1986 Nameless Tower and Gasherin 4 expedition. I climbed with Greg Child, who was one of the guys on that trip, really highly experienced mountaineer, Tim McCartney-Snape, Tom Hargis, and a whole host of other guys. And I was there because I had big wall expertise. And we were going to do the Nameless Tower first, which is a 20,000 foot spire. And I had envisioned it was sort of like the Zodiac at 20,000 feet. That's what I thought I was going to do. It turns out that the Nameless Tower is more like the south face of the column at 20,000 feet. And so I think Baffin Island was probably more of what I was envisioning in my head. That's what I thought I was getting there. But nevertheless, we ended up switching plans and doing Gasherin 4 first.
Why is that?
I don't know. That's how the planners decided to do it. It was probably the timing of the porters and how many porters we had. And so anyway, that we were successful in climbing a new route on Gasherin 4, and it was only the second ascent of that mountain since the Italians did it in 58. Greg, Tom, and Tim made the summit, and they were going for it up there. They spent a night out, a bivouac in the open at 26,000 feet, and they're lucky to get back in one piece. So they got back and they were knackered, and the weather was starting to turn. And at that point, I had been to 24,000 feet, which was higher than I could ever imagine climbing. We were there without oxygen. I mean, it's a trip climbing at 24,000 feet. You take one step and take 10 breaths, and another step and 10 breaths, and you look up at the sky and it's black. Like you feel like
Whoa.
you're in outer space.
Whoa. Was supplemental oxygen part of the culture of high altitude climbing back then? Like, was it even an option?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Okay. You guys
But
just chose to forego it.
yeah, we had this. I mean, the guys that led the expedition, Tim and Greg, envisioned it being without oxygen.
Wow.
That was better style.
Yeah,
And
for
that
sure.
was fine.
Now, isn't there like a certain like genetic pool of people that just don't have what it takes to be above a certain level of altitude without supplemental oxygen? There's like some sort of genome that you have to have.
It's some physiological thing, and I felt like I did pretty well at altitude. A lot of what it is, and what I learned from these trips is, especially watching Tim McCartney Snape, is he was like MacGyver up there. So every time something would break or something would need maintenance, or he would be timed to melt snow and drink and replenish your body, it was just a constant game of maintaining yourself and maintaining your equipment and staying in position to get to the top. And I think people don't understand that about high altitude climbing is you're really just you're just doing everything you can to stack the odds in your favor. And they're little steps all along, very little steps. Acclimatization, being safe at the right, or making certain approaches through couloirs at the right time of day so you don't get avalanched. A lot of little steps involved, and I really learned that. I liked the trip. I unfortunately was there the same year that a whole lot of people died on K2, and that was very sobering. Some of the best mountaineers in the world died that year.
Were you hearing about their deaths like live as you were out there, or did it all hit you after you got back?
We heard news trickle in, and I actually hiked to K2 base camp so I could look at the mountain, and the mountain's amazing. We were on Gasherbrum 4, which is, I don't know, about 3,000 feet shorter than K2. And the day that I hiked to K2, I could look at Gasherbrum 4, or I was at Concordia, which is this intersection of glaciers, and I could see Gasherbrum 4 and I could see K2, and Gasherbrum 4 was calm. There was no snow blowing off the top. K2 was in another stratosphere. There was snow blowing off the top at probably 60 knots wind going right off the top like a giant plume. And it's a whole nother animal, that mountain.
Yeah. What was the climbing like on Gasherbrum?
Gasherbrum.
Uh-huh. How was the climbing on Gasherbrum 4? Like any technical roped climbing, or are you kind of just mountaineering, mountain slog up the snow?
The route we were on was mostly mountain slogging, although it was the type of mountain slogging where you're on a ridge and you're looking down. China's on one side and Pakistan's on the other, and if you fall, you feel like you're going to fall all the way down into China. I mean, it's a 50-degree slope can seem very steep when you're up there without a rope, especially if it's a little icy.
Wow. And it was just I would imagine you've had like ice and mountain experience before you went out there, or?
I did. I spent a couple of seasons ice climbing and mountaineering in Canada, which is a great resource if anyone is interested in getting into that. Could just go to the Canadian Rockies. They're wonderful.
What about Nameless Tower? So that was the objective after.
Yeah, so that was my specialty. I was there for Nameless Tower. Greg and Tom both made the summit of Gasherbrum 4. They were really, really knackered, really tired from their bivvy out and making the summit. So when we went to Nameless Tower, I was all gung-ho. It's like I wanted to fire up this route. And those guys were, soldiering away. We were getting some fixed lines in, and we were making progress. We were bivvying up, I don't know, maybe a third of the way up the cliff after a very long approach up couloirs and ice fields, and then up onto the main tower, maybe a third of the way up. And those guys were making noises like they didn't think it was right. They wanted to go back down because the conditions weren't very good. It was actually too warm. So all the features wouldn't freeze at night. And in the morning, you would get ice that start to fall off from the top. And I'm just going, I'm so motivated. I want to get on top of this thing. And those guys are I mean, they really had their fill already. And I remember one time there was a pitch where it was like A3 plus or A4, and I was hooking, I think it was hooking up and left and doing some knife blades and small pitons, heading up to a big dihedral. And above me was sort of another dihedral with a roof feature. And it was a hanging belay. I'm looking back down at those guys. I'm maybe 80 feet up the wall or 80 feet up the pitch. And this refrigerator size ice block just decides to cut loose on the roof above us. And it falls right between me and Greg and Tom, right over my rope. I mean, it didn't hit my rope, but it came within inches of cutting my rope. And I looked down at those guys and I said, "It's unanimous." and then we just packed up our stuff, threw the haul bags off so we could retrieve them down later, and bailed. And we were out of there fast because it wasn't good conditions.
How high were you up? At least how far away from the summit were you?
Oh, we weren't close. I don't remember exactly. I want to say we were a third of the way up the route.
Yeah. Had the route Eternal Flame been established on that wall yet?
I don't think so.
Okay.
This was in 86, so I don't know when Eternal Flame was done.
And had it been, the route the rock had been climbed to the top itself before?
Yes, we were on a new route.
Okay.
But that Nameless Tower had been climbed.
Yeah. Now, are you like, was the route kind of chosen for you, or are you questing based off of features and your own intuition to kind of link things together?
Well, at that point there wasn't even a route up this face, and I believe it was the northeast face. And so we were basically just climbing that face, that feature, and we're following the most obvious line we could find.
Wow, and you're just piecing it together pitch by pitch.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Did you ever, like, psychologically, were you ever, other than the refrigerator block, like overwhelmed by the sheer magnitude of the objective that you were trying to get done?
Not really. No, to me, when you get there, it's sometimes cliffs are in your mind, they're gigantic, right? I remember when I was going to college and I transferred to UC Colorado, University of Colorado Boulder, and I'd seen all these pictures in this book, Climb. And a shout out to the Enormocast, it would be Climb.
Climb, yeah.
Yeah. So
exactly.
Anyway, I saw that book Climb and I thought, man, El Dorado Canyon. And I thought, this is this massive place. And I go there and I thought, oh, it's just so small. It's not that big. And the Himalayas are the same way. They don't seem small, but the scale seems appropriate.
When you're there.
Yeah, when you're there. Just like any mountain, though, there's foreshortening. But you already have that programmed into your mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is true. I definitely think that, at least on a smaller scale, a lot of the objectives that I've kind of built up in my mind, the second I'm at the base, I'm just like, it looks pretty fine. And then you start to actually see the way up and you're just like, okay, I can actually visualize how this is going to happen.
And it's not like the Rupel face where that's a gigantic face. You're already, base camp is 18,000 feet. So you might have 8,000 feet to get to the top. And that's a manageable mountain. I mean, it's high altitude, so it's a whole different ball game, but yeah, it seems reasonable.
How are you dealing with the altitude? Because at least even for me at 14,000 feet at the belays, I have to like force myself to continue a structured breathing protocol. So I don't like just breathe like we are here normally up that high. Was there any techniques that you use to maintain consciousness up that high?
I felt the worst around 17,000 feet because your body really hasn't acclimatized yet. And so we just took our time acclimatizing. And by the time I was at 24,000 feet, it's obviously rougher. It's more strenuous. Your throat hurts because it's so dry. There's a lot of factors. It's not a picnic, but I felt good. Like I felt like I could do it. I mean, I left that expedition thinking, oh, I can do this.
Wow. Now, with Gasherburn and Nameless Tower, two completely different objectives in terms of what you're kind of bringing to the table to achieve them. You said, you had talked about logistics and all the little baby steps that you have to pay attention to the whole time. Like, is that kind of challenge like something that captures your attention more than just like executing movement in climbing? Like I think you have a quote here, or you've said you like objectives that have like a direction or a progress or a destination somewhere that you're going. Did that kind of like mountaineering expedition style like fit that motivation for you?
I think it did. I feel like I can organize things well and keep an objective, in my mind and not lose focus on it and achieve that. So the whole mountaineering thing was pretty good as far as that goes. The thing that didn't work out for me is I wanted to start a business in real estate in San Diego. And you really can't be in the Himalayas 6 months out of the year and carry on a business like that. So I decided to instead just pursue rock climbing, sport climbing. I'd figure I'd live longer and maybe make some money.
Yeah. How much of it was I might die out here versus I want to start a business? Like how much of it was a reflection of your mortality?
Well, I'd already decided to start a business when I was on that trip. And the fact that all those guys died on K2 that year, I mean, it was pretty grim. So I mean, that wasn't a big part of our expedition because we only heard about that towards the end. But it definitely leaves an impression on you. I mean, these guys are the best guys in the world. I see what they're like, and the mountains are unforgiving.
Yeah, I think once you start to step into those high altitude, especially with snow or ice, I think luck starts to play a larger role in your survival. It's like you can be as prepared as you want, but in a sense, you are rolling the dice a little bit. It's hard to justify that.
On Nameless, we would do these approaches up this gully.
Yeah.
Get above it, and we'd start at, I don't know what it was, like 2 a.m. in the dark, and first light comes, and we'd watch avalanches go down it.
It's a pretty notorious approach gully. I remember hearing about it. Like it's like you have the shooting range. You got to go up at a specific time. You can't be in it during the day because it just is a shooting gallery. Yeah, that's wild.
There's also a lot of sitting around with mountaineering, and I'm not great at sitting around. I'm patient, but I'm not great at sitting around.
Yeah, there's all these stories of people like playing cards and just like burning time. Yeah, the mental attrition starts to play a factor. You start to go a little crazy, I would imagine. Yeah. What about, so, you had been chasing this goal of high altitude mountaineering since you were young. It had been such a focus for you. And then it seems like a pretty massive switch. So, I mean, you obviously had a business that you wanted to start. You had that vision, but in a sense, you're also kind of letting this portion of you die, this like portion of who you wanted to be. Like, was that identity switch hard for you? Or was it an easy, calculated decision?
Not really, because in life you can't have everything, so you have to make decisions. And I made that decision. I couldn't sort of be a Himalayan climber. I either had to really jump into it. There's a lot of preparation involved. Getting sponsors to help pay for things, the relationship with the sponsors, the packing, the logistics, everything is a lot of work. So I had to let go of something, and that's what I did.
Okay. So clear-cut decision. You just knew in your heart that was the right way. Yeah. Are you familiar with the Burgess twins? Yeah. I interviewed Al.
I listened to that interview.
Did you?
Yeah.
Nice.
It's amazing.
All 6 hours of it.
No, I mean, the guy is just, you could just listen to him all day long.
For sure. Yeah. Wild storyteller.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's really cool. He's in Spain now.
Okay.
Yeah. He's just living out his retirement, climbing sport climbs in Spain.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. I think about that guy pretty often. I got his book over here. This show is brought to you by Lives in Designs. You've heard me talk about this outdoor apparel company, and I'm still here sharing about it because honestly, I can't stop wearing their clothes. It's rare to find clothes that you can wear on the wall and in everyday life. And that is what Lives In does best. Their mission is to create clothing that allows us to own less and live more, combining technical features and durable construction with a modern styling to create lasting clothing that facilitates the life of an adventurer. As an added bonus, Lives In is helping the environment by creating their clothing out of recycled ocean waste, which I think is pretty cool. And there's a 30-day money-back guarantee, so you can buy it, try it, and if you still don't like it, they will give you your money back. Right now, you can get 15% off at Lives In by going to the link in the description below and using code TCM15 at checkout. That's the link in the description below and code TCM15 for 15% off at checkout. And remember, every dollar spent at Lives In is a dollar supporting this podcast. So continuing this progression, I guess we're going back a step, but I think we skipped a story that I want to cover. Is you had kind of a close call on the painted wall on Stratosphere in the Black Canyon. This was before your time in the Himalayas. Like I said, we're going back in time a little bit, but I'd like to just dive into that story real quick, and then we'll jump back. Kind of describe the climb. What was the significance around it? Why'd you choose it? And then walk me through your kind of experience on the wall.
I moved to Boulder in, I believe it was 1980, to go to University of Colorado Boulder. Met some of the locals there. Met a guy named Leonard Coyne, he had this shirt that said "World's Greatest Alpinist and Free Climber." He was a real boisterous kind of guy. He's fun. He was just funny and entertaining. So he latched onto me because I was this new guy with all kinds of motivation, and I probably didn't know any better. A lot of his friends just didn't want to go to the Black Canyon with him. So he said, "Oh, you want to do this climb? And it's this big free climb, and it's in the Black Canyon." And I'd heard of the Black Canyon, painted wall. I didn't really know a whole lot about it. I said, "Sure." So we drove there in the middle of the night, and I don't even think we were able to sleep. I think by the time we got there, it was maybe 4 a.m, and we wanted to do a 1-day ascent of this thing free. So we started hiking down the canyon. I'd never even been to the Black Canyon, never even seen it. And we're going down the SOB Gully, which is this horrible thing. Dirt, really steep dirt scree and slippery rocks and stuff. And we're heading down there, and there's starting to become light in the sky. So I can hear the river down below roaring, and I can see these silhouettes of these big walls all around me. It was really crazy sort of feeling to see the Black Canyon that way for the first time, and knowing you're going to go up on what was the most notorious wall there. It had a really bad reputation for being loose and dangerous and all this sort of stuff. So Leonard and I got to the base. We were being supported by a guy who had broken his arm. He had a cast on. He was going to Jumar behind us. I think he was on the first try, but I'm not sure. I think it was the first try with this guy. So he only went up like 2 pitches and realized it wasn't right for him to go. So he ended up wrapping down our lines before we got too high in the wall. And then Leonard and I cast off, and we got within 350 vertical feet of the top, and we hit this band of pegmatite, just this rotten stuff. And that's where you go through a big bands of pegmatite. If you look from a distance, it's the serpent's head on that white pegmatite.
It's the white stripes.
Yeah, the white stripes.
Okay.
We got up there, and the route finding was really hard at that point. We just didn't know how we were going to get through these basically A4 overhanging roofs that we had to nail through. And we were just there with a free climbing rack, just going for it, no bivy gear. So Glenn Randall was going to photograph us for his book, Vertigo Games, and Glenn was going to wrap over the top and photograph us coming up. No, that was the second time I was on there. The first time we had to, Leonard and I got stuck. We got benighted. It rained on us, and it was like thunder and lightning and, like an electric storm being up on this big wall, not comfortable at all, and just raining. And Leonard and I started playing this game called Yosemite Climber, and it starts with an A. So you have to think of a name of a climb in Yosemite that's an A. And you say Astroman, and then B, Butterballs. But we were hallucinating at that point because we were so tired and so hypothermic. And I remember just coming in and out of consciousness, and he would say, "Randy, you're on E, it's your turn." I go, "Huh?"
Yeah, what are we doing?
So we woke up the next morning and wrapped out of there. And the second time was when Glenn Randall.
So you went back?
Yeah, we went back.
Wow.
We went back a bunch of times.
For this particular route?
For this route.
Wow. And you kept getting stopped at the same spot?
Yeah.
Wow. How big is this band? Like 20, 30 feet?
Oh, well, the pegmatite we got through.
Oh, you got through.
It's just horrible. It's like really, really dangerous 510A type of climbing. You can pull off big crystals of things the size of softballs and just huck them down. You're climbing through this stuff. But the rock was amazing, or it was total dog shit. It was either these really rotten bands or it was just amazing rock. But the amazing rock was also fractured into big blocks sometimes, where you'd have this perfect face and just fracture block just waiting to fall off. Really, really old rock and really dense, hard to drill in. Where was I? So we're playing the Yosemite climber game. I'm on F,
Yeah.
Freestone. Anyway, so this whole thing became this big epic with Leonard and me. Glenn Randall came on the second time, and we had figured out how to climb out of this thing. We figured out that we had to traverse, and we'd done that by some recon on rappels previously. So the first time up the wall, we had no recon. Second time, we thought, oh, we can't get through this top section without figuring it out. So Leonard and I wrapped down pieces of it and looked at it and figured, oh, we have to make this giant traverse from the Forest Walker route outright into the Dragon route. And that connection we called Stratosphere. So Stratosphere became the name of the whole climb, but it's really that connection from Forest Walker to free climb over to the Dragon. When Glenn Randall went with us, again, weather moved in. Glenn was on top. He was going to wrap down and take photos of us. He ended up throwing like 300 feet of rope tied together, 250-foot pieces, going over this sharp pegmatite over the top and down to me. And so I went first Jumaring, and they were not, this is before we had static ropes and we knew the wisdom of using static ropes in situations like that. So, you Jumar on 300 feet of dynamic rope, and you probably Jumar for what seems like 5 minutes before the rope stretch is done stretching. And now you're kind of up on this rubber band Jumaring, and I couldn't see the top of the wall because it was shrouded in clouds. So my ropes disappeared into clouds. I could see down to the river. We're 2,500 feet down to the river. I Jumared to the top, and then I could start to see through the clouds, and I could see my rope going over the edge, and it was fraying, and it was sawing itself over this edge. Yeah. And the closer I got, I realized the rope was cut in half. The core was coming out. There were pieces of the core out. The sheath was cut all the way through on one side, on half of it, and pieces of the core were coming out. And I almost vomited just with the stress and everything getting past that one section. I remember when I finally slid my Jumar past that one section, I just took this huge sigh of relief. Like I really almost died because the thing almost broke.
Wow. And you were not on terrain where you could like hold onto the wall or?
No, it was overhanging below that.
Oh my gosh.
So, I mean, it's a free hanging Jumar.
Wow.
And I could see it sawing up there.
And you had no choice but to continue causing what it was, like doing the thing that was causing the rope to get sawed. Yeah.
How far could I Jumar up before the thing would, cut?
Wow.
So the answer was I was able to Jumar over the cut before it cut.
Yeah, that's wild.
And so I fixed the rope for Leonard. I ended up tying a rope that he would Jumar on, and then I had another one paralleling it and backing it up in case that one broke.
Yeah.
So that was, we hadn't yet done the wall free at that point. So Leonard and I still had to go back and do it. And then we get to the top, and Leonard said, I wouldn't ask my worst enemy to do that route. He's just, for some reason, it was a brilliant route, but he was just so sick of it at that point. And I don't know, a season passed, and my friend Rob Slater wanted to climb it, and he also wanted to climb and jump off
of that route.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I went up Stratosphere with Rob to do the second ascent. So we did it, but we had figured out sort of a good way to do it, a safer way to do it, where what we did is we lowered some haul bags over the top down this obvious sort of dihedral where the Forest Walker comes up before the traverse out. And we had portal edges and all our stuff there. So we would climb from the ground in a really easy day up to that stuff, and then bivvy there, leave everything there, and then do the Stratosphere traverse and get out of the Dragon, and then haul our bags, walk over and haul our bags.
Okay. Wow.
So the first time we did it in a day, first free ascent. Second time was in 2 days. I just wanted to enjoy it. It was really fun. It's actually a really fun route at that point.
What does it go at?
511C.
Okay. No aid?
No.
Wow. Okay.
It's all free. It's, I don't know. It's something like 30 pitches.
Wow.
It's really long.
And I'm assuming it's seen multiple ascents after this story?
It's seen maybe 4 ascents.
Wow.
I maybe more, but
Wow.
I only know of a couple people that have done it.
I don't hear a lot about people climbing in Black Canyon at all. It's not publicized if people are climbing there. Yeah.
It's a serious place.
Yeah. Just because of the nature of the rock. Yeah. And we did Escape Artist.
Okay.
I climbed that route. It's like off to the left of SOB Gully. Fantastic climb.
There's some great climbs there.
Oh, yeah.
Stratosphere is a great climb, but it's a different breed. You know, it's not.
Do you think people could do it in a single push? Because you guys broke it up, right?
Well, the first time we did it in a single push.
Okay. The second time you just wanted to slow it down.
Yeah, second time we slowed it down. Oh, yeah. I mean, by today's standards, simul climbing.
Yeah.
Easy, yeah. I mean, it's a 2,500 foot wall with, I don't know, 400 feet of traversing in it. So there's almost 3,000 feet of climbing. But a lot of it's not very hard. It's like 5.8, run out 5.8.
Okay. Love it.
Mm-hmm.
Hell yeah. I add it to my my to-do list.
It's a cool route.
Yeah. Okay. Very cool. And that was the close call, was the rope, jugging the rope that time. Yeah. Yeah. I definitely, I've been doing some rigging and stuff and for photos, and that's always on the back of my mind. I'm like always looking up and just like, that would just be the worst.
Yeah, I've learned a lot about fixing lines, especially doing new routes and, you know, how you manage your ropes so you don't have to worry about that in the future.
What kind of short tips do you have for avoiding that kind of thing happening?
If you can always see your knot, so let's say I'm going down a route that has some bolts in it, and I'll get to a bolt and maybe I'll put a clove hitch in right there and then continue down. And if I can, with the idea that when I go back up later on, maybe that day, maybe a month from then, who knows whenever it was, that I can, when I start Jumaring, I can look up and I can see that knot. And also 2 carabiners, like one on the hanger, which would be pinning your rope against the wall, and then another one below that so that your rope is lifted away from the wall, you know, kind of parallel to the wall. And then you put two beaners on a bolt hanger, you know, not 2 beaners together, but one like a daisy chain, and then clip a clove hitch into the second one, the lower one, and then it's a clean knot. You can see it. And then when you go down, look back up, and when you can't see that knot anymore, if there's another anchor, make another anchor, and then keep going down.
I love that. Yeah, I was trying to shoot a kid over here in Charleston, and it was like a 600-foot wall. Like trying to come up with logistics. I had bought 200-meter static lines, and that was the biggest question for me. I was like, it's so far up there, you know, like just having one point of contact. I love the redundancy of just doing it on the way down. It's really smart.
Yeah, and we've done tons of that, you know, developing routes. It really makes a difference.
For sure. Especially I would imagine if you need to like get into different areas of the wall too, you can kind of like come over here and come over here a little bit.
That was the painted wall wasn't the only time that I had a rope almost cut. I was on the Blasphemy wall and I had a rope fixed to one of the top of the routes. I forgot which route it was. It could have been Dark Boy or something like that. And there's F Dude and I forgot the names of the routes right now. But there's that 14C. And I wanted to try out that thing. And so I left my rope up there. I was going to Jumar, but in the meantime, someone had switched my rope and they'd taken it from an anchor and they had moved totally sideways to another anchor, which was like one of those mussy hooks that is just an open hook. And they just slotted my rope over those hooks. So now my rope goes from an anchor horizontally, like 40 feet through a mussy hook and straight down. So when I Jumar'd up that, what happened was, as you Jumar up, there's this dynamic action between the mussy hook and the original anchor, that horizontal, and that almost cut the rope there.
Wow. Even though it was a smooth, so it was the pivot point on the mussy hook that was causing the abrasion?
No, it was a point between the mussy hook and the
contact with the rock.
Yeah, contact with the rock, just some little sharp crossley. You know, stuff is like razor sharp on limestone sometimes, and just one little piece of rock. So people have to be careful. And another time that I was climbing early in my career, I was doing Tangerine Trip, and a guy had left in Yosemite. He had left a rope fixed overnight off, I think, Tangerine Trip, and Jumar in the morning, and the wind had blown the rope around and sawed it, and he fell and died.
Wow. because he couldn't see what had
He
happened.
couldn't see it. He couldn't see the knot.
Wow. Yeah. Even that situation where it's horizontal, like if he had tied a clove hitch on the mussy, that would have negated that problem because there's no stretch.
Right.
Every time you anchor the rope, you're removing the dynamic property above it.
Right.
Which is smart.
And that's another reason why I do those clove hitches, is because that eliminates that sawing action between bolts.
Yeah. It's only between you and the last point of contact that you're going to have that dynamic property.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wild. Now, I guess since we're on this topic, like of close calls, it seems, at least so far from the way we've talked, they've all happened on rigging or route development. Have you had any stuff with big walling or free climbing, any close calls?
Oh, what's that stupid warm up in the gallery? It's an 11C crack. Is it yak crack? I tied in the bottom of that thing, and this is when I was really cocky. And it's like 11C. I couldn't even get pumped on 11C, and I just warm up on it cold. And I didn't even tie my shoes. I had these Las Sportivas and just left them loose and tied in with a bowline, which I always do. I climbed up, got to the anchor. I didn't clip the anchors. I thought, I'm not even pumped. I'm just going to climb down now. So now I down climb this thing, this 11C, unclipping my lead rope as I go down. And then right as I step off onto the ground, I look at my bowline and it had undone itself, because I didn't follow a protocol that I always do, which is I tie my bowline, and right after I tie my shoes, I put the bowline around the bottom of my foot and stretch the rope so I know the bowline is set. And because I didn't tie my shoes, that little bit of sequence changed. I missed that step, and I just basically free soloed the yak crack.
And then down soloed it.
And down soloed it.
Wow. That's so interesting how we can find ourselves in these positions of just complete risk without even knowing it, out of just negligence or lack of awareness. I wonder how many times, like, you were aware of that happening after the fact, right? I wonder how many of us go through our climbing career having almost died and not even know that it happened because of simple stuff like that.
Well, I don't think very many, because, I mean, at some point you have to realize you weren't tied in. At some point, if you really almost died, at some point you recognize.
Well, what if, like, I guess a simple example is like if you are climbing above your first piece and you're 30 feet from the ground, and like if you fell and it ripped, you could have hit, like, all these circumstances that could happen that could have led to injury. There's all these variables that play into it.
Yes. I don't like getting into too many hypotheticals, because then I'd be afraid to climb.
Yeah, that's fair.
But I mean, you got to control the sort of the procedures, and the habits that you get in. And, like my habit of putting knots in fixed lines as I go down, that kind of stuff. Put knot at the end of the rope so you don't wrap off the end of your rope. Just procedures. Just get all that dialed down, and don't worry about the hypothetical stuff. Just climb. Because if you don't have confidence, then you're actually going to get hurt.
For sure. Yeah.
You need that.
Yeah. Back to this kind of progression. So, you got back from the Himalaya. You had gotten on a climb with Rob Slater, Scorched Earth. And this seemed like a big turning point for the both of you, in regards to your directions as climbers. And for you, it seemed like a big shift between big walls and sport climbing. And for Rob, it was kind of just like, I'm done climbing altogether. For that pivot, like, what, again, you kind of went through this, I'm going to be high altitude mountaineer. I'm going to start, do a business. And then you're like, I'm doing big walls. Now I'm going to be, sport climbing. Was it once again the pursuit of business that kind of like spurred that shift? And what about that climb in particular kind of like helped facilitated that change?
Well, it's kind of a turning point for both of us. Like you said, I was, Scorched Earth must have been 87 or.
It's like shortly after you got back from the Himalaya, right?
Yeah. So I got back 86. It could have been 87 for Scorched Earth. Rob and I wanted to do this route. We had known about this route for a long time. And Rob wanted to start his business on the Chicago Board of Trade. So he was going to get on the seat on the Chicago Board of Trade. I was going to do my real estate business. And this was sort of our last farewell to Yosemite. In fact, one of the pitches on that route, we named it Farewell to Yosemite. So Rob was just talking about the Chicago Board of Trade the whole time, and I was talking about sport climbing, and but this was one great last wall climb between two really good friends. So that it was just a great climb, just really fun.
I guess the main thing I'm trying to lead in here is this business that has captured your attention over your entire life. I hear it mentioned. I hear, you say real estate business. I'm curious if you can bring us to like what it is exactly. Like what have you built, and what was the vision since you were young? Like, how have you developed this business? What does it look like, and how have you kind of achieved, your, I'll use air quotes, but like your financial freedom that you have? I mean, you flew here in your own plane. It's just, I think you've achieved a level of freedom that I think a lot of people aspire to. So I'm curious as to like diving into that business a little bit and kind of what you've actually done and how that's grown.
Well, I always wanted to work for myself. When I was going through college and earning my way through that, I would paint houses and wallpaper houses. So a lot of the clients were very wealthy that I worked for. But the point is I could work for 2 weeks on a job and then take 2 weeks off and go to Yosemite and climb. And so it worked for me. It was, it was a trade. And I think trades, I ended up with a lot of respect for people that work trades because I've been around them my whole life in my real estate business, hiring guys to do stuff. And I see how hard people work. And I worked really hard at painting houses. And I would always hire these climbers that were like-minded like me. And we would bust out these jobs, start at 6 in the morning and work till 6 at night and do that as many days in a row as it took to finish the job. So I wanted to work for myself, but I didn't want to do painting. Real estate always was interesting to me because I was painting houses, I was painting office buildings and things like that. So it was tangible. I grew up in the 70s when inflation was rampant, and I saw the, escalating value of assets because the dollar was worth less. And we've seen it again just recently. So it was kind of like watching the movie happen again. And real estate was a hedge against that. So when I finished my college, my expedition to Pakistan and all that, I contacted some wealthy people and ended up starting a real estate company where I ran the company and did all the work, and then my partner provided the funds. So we would buy an apartment building and sell that, exchange it, buy another one, bigger one, and so I became like an apartment manager, basically an asset manager with apartment buildings.
Now, were you like buying, renovating, flipping, or buying,
renovating, and keeping,
and then renting out?
Yeah.
Okay. And commercial or residential?
Residential.
How many properties do you manage or own now?
Now I don't have any.
Okay.
Yeah. I've retired from it completely.
Okay.
I'm done.
Nice.
But it was a hard job. I mean, every month people would move in and move out, and you'd show up at someone's apartment and there was a moving van there and you had no idea, and they're gone. They've disappeared.
Oh, just left it.
Yeah. So okay. It was in lower income areas of San Diego. There was a lot of challenges, but we had a lot of good tenants, really good people.
Now, were you like property manager? Were you like handling the intake, outtake?
I had employees that would do it, but okay. I mean, I'd done so much of it myself when it was small that when it was a little bigger, I had employees, but I would go to the office and, monitor what they're doing and help them do their job. And had some good employees. That's
cool. Now, did you always have a venture capitalist to kind of help you, or was that kind of the kickstart in the beginning and then you ended up using your own?
I was partners with this gentleman and his wife for 27 years.
Wow. So for someone who, because I think that particular situation, finding someone like that to get into business with, I would say is unique. How would you advise people to kind of create those kind of relationships in business in their life?
When I was really young, I was not as good at making relationships with people like that as being older and smarter now. And so I'd encourage people to, like older guys like me, if I'm a pilot and I'm at an airport and a young guy comes up to me and asks me questions about something, I mean, people want to help each other. And young real estate investors would want to talk to me and take me out to lunch. And pick my brain for stuff. And I always like to help people. And the willingness to help is really pretty universal. So if you're interested in this kind of stuff, try to meet people that do it. Try to get some mentors and people to help you.
Yeah, I was actually been talking to my brother about this, and the concept of literally just like reaching out cold to certain people that inspire you and just be like, hey, will you mentor me? And I think this goes beyond climbing. It could be in any aspect of business or life that you would like to grow in. And I think, to your point, there's a bunch of people out there that are willing to help other people. So yeah, I think the lesson is
Yeah,
just
don't
reach
be
out.
afraid. Don't be afraid to ask someone. They could say no, but that's all they're going to say.
Yeah.
If at the worst, or get off my lawn. I don't know.
In terms of reaching out, it's got to be more than just like, hey, will you mentor me? Right. There's got like, in terms of, I guess, giving people a structure or guidance on like what look like a cold call reach out would look like. I would imagine it's going to be like, come to the table with some pre-existing knowledge on the subject. Maybe come with like a educated question, like that shows you've already done research, that shows you are invested in kind of what you're doing in the first place, and have something for them to immediately respond to, rather than it just being like, oh, sure, I'll be a mentor. Like, well, what does that even mean?
Well, yeah, don't ask such an open-ended question like that. You're not going to get a good response. What you said is exactly right. Do your homework, figure out what you're trying to learn, what your questions are, whatever it is.
Yeah, I think Tanner, actually, his story of reaching out to you is hilarious. He reached out to you and it's like, hey, can I carry all your stuff up to the base of El Cajon Wall?
Uh-huh.
And I loved it. He's like, hell yeah, you can carry my stuff. I just like, that was a really cool example of exactly what we're talking about here, right? Like, I don't think he'd ever met you before. That was the first time. He was just like inspired by your story and knew his vision of where he wanted to be as a climber, and just kind of made it happen. And like you said, you were willing to entertain someone that was willing to put in some work and get out there and show a passion for kind of what he was trying to achieve.
Yeah, in route development, there's a lot of work to be done. Carrying stuff, trying to figure out where the trails go. Just a lot of work. In fact, I don't know, sometimes it feels like a manual labor job, but we love it.
Yeah. So, I mean, while we're on this topic of mentorship, like, what did it look like for you when you were younger? And then how has it changed I guess we're talking about climbing specifically now. How has it changed to modern day?
I didn't even know what mentorship was when I was a young climber. I had climbers that I went climbing with who were more experienced with me, and in a way they're a mentor, but I didn't really understand that concept, because for me, when I was young, I was just thinking, I can do anything. I'll do it all on my own, sort of.
You were a self-taught climber in the beginning.
Yeah, pretty much a self-taught climber. So I had this feeling like I'll just figure it out and do it. But I was very lucky to climb with some really good climbers early on. I did in 77, I went up Tis-sa-ack with Augie Klein and Max Jones. And these guys were older than me and more experienced. Max was impressive as far as his ability to climb 512, climb A4, set up hauling systems, do big wall stuff. I mean, he was the entire package. Then climb with Dale Bard in 78, climb with a lot of really good climbers. And so I was being mentored, but it wasn't like this sort of the current day notion of mentorship where you take a more active role in learning and being taught and that sort of thing.
There's this a rule I like, at least taking this into the modern day, is the 20-60-20 rule. Have you heard of this? So 20% of your partners should be better than you, and act kind of as a mentor. 60% of your climbing partnership should be people that are even with you, where you kind of each teach each other things as you grow. And then 20% of the last 20% of your partners should be people who you act as a mentor to. And I really like that split. I think each segment of that experience as a climber is so crucial to our development as climbers. And I've definitely, from the very beginning, I started out like very much as a mentor, kind of like hey, well, just come out and climb with me so I can get my objectives done. And like, even though I didn't really know what I was doing, I was still teaching somebody that didn't know what I knew. And so that's been a huge part of my development, is just like playing with that ratio of 20-60-20.
Yeah, I've mentored other climbers, and I didn't even realize I was doing it. When I needed partners in Boulder, I would just go to the bulletin board and find someone who's willing to belay. They might only climb 5'7". I made a deal with them. I said, "You belay me on this project up in Boulder Canyon, and then after that, I'll lead you whatever you want to do." And so things like that, it was interesting. But yeah, I didn't understand the whole mentorship, but it's in a way I was doing it on both ends of it.
Yeah, and it seems like back then it was almost like ingrained in the process because there were less climbers, and so once you got into the scene, it was just like you got absorbed in the scene and you were climbing, especially when you're choosing objectives like yourself. It was just like you grew through just like being around everybody and being with these people. But now it seems like there's so many climbers and there's so many little segments. Like I talk to so many people that have troubles even finding partners to begin with. Like I think lead rope soloing is getting really popular. People are struggling to find people to teach them how to climb, or they don't feel safe, so they don't have people, or harder than that. They're having a hard time finding people that are harder climbers than them. There's like this weird kind of situation that we're finding ourselves in the community, at least that I'm seeing, where there's like a giant disparity between like mentors and the larger pool of climbers.
Well, I think part of that is due to people wanting to be shown the way. You have to take the initiative to buy a book about climbing and go out and study it, and go to the rock and tie your knots and check the book and see if you've done it right, or YouTube, however you're getting information. But there's so much available you can teach yourself that you don't have to rely on a mentor. The mentors will be there, but they're not just growing on trees. You have to take the initiative and learn. When I learned how to climb, I had Basic Rockcraft by Oral Robbins, and my sister's boyfriend at the time and I would go out and tie our anchors and look at the book and look at the anchor, and it's like, okay, I think we've done it right, and we taught ourselves. So people have to be willing to take that step, because there's all the information's out there.
Yeah, I think that's a good point.
Don't wait for a mentor.
Yeah,
the mentor will show up sometime
once you've gotten to a place where you're in a position to be menteed, essentially.
Yeah. I mean, what I see, and it happens with surfing and climbing, and there'll be people that are keen to learn, but then there's people like Tanner who've taken that extra step, and you can see that. You see that extra step and go, okay, this guy's serious. Because I don't mind spending my time helping people, but I'd rather do it to people who are really going to continue and be serious about it, not just, hey, that was a fun day, and then they never do it again.
If you could answer this question, what is the greatest piece of advice that you've ever received or felt like you've given to somebody?
Oh, I don't know. You need to be a good listener. I learned that through business and dealing with people in the real estate business and screening tenants and all this kind of stuff. Just in general, be willing to listen.
Expand on that a little more. I think, we hear that common trope kind of pretty often. It's like, you're going to be a good listener. What does that actually mean?
Most people will tell you what you need to learn if you give them enough time. You can sit in a car and be quiet, and the other person after a while maybe gets uncomfortable being quiet, and they'll start talking, and maybe they'll start telling you things that if you weren't a good listener, you would never learn. I would say that. And then set goals, set goals and try. And this is an individual thing. It's something that suited me. It may not suit everyone, but I like to have a goal, and I like to see what I'm doing towards that goal as time goes on. So if you want to climb 512, you might have certain landmarks to get to on your way to 512. Don't think of, I got to climb 512 overnight. It's like, oh, well, I need to climb 510 in the gym, and then 511 plus in the gym, and then I need to lead 510D outside, and just sort of have these landmarks, and then you'll get there.
It's kind of like you're always keep the knot in view. Mm-hmm. The same principle in a way.
Yeah.
So back onto this, like the element of business, and I guess to wrap up this chapter here is, like, was there ever a tension between your love for adventure and climbing and your pursuit of stability through business? Like, you were clear about your both, right? You've had both passions. Like, was there ever a tension between the two that you had to like mitigate or get around?
Oh, for sure. For example, it would have been great to spend every October and November in the Red River Gorge. Uh, just different things that I wanted to do that I couldn't do because I had a business. So you have to, I mean, life is give and take. You get to do things, but you don't get to do everything. So you have to set realistic goals.
How do you decipher between what you should and want? Like, you know what I mean? Like the difference between like chasing things that we might want, but maybe know we should do. Like, how are you able to make the decision between what's the right decision and what's not?
Give me an example.
So like you just said, like you know, it'd be easy to go to Red River Gorge and just be there for those months. But, you know, you had like a business, like, I guess it's priorities. You have to choose priorities in life.
Yeah. Okay. For sure. Yeah. I would always remember basically what side my bread is buttered on. And I had to take care of that first. And that was my business obligations. I had that to my partner, to my employees, to my tenants. So that would take priority. So I'd always get that work done and then do the climbing. And you have to keep your priorities realistic and focused. Because, you know, if you just say, oh, well, I didn't show up for that meeting because I was so close on sending my project. And I thought if I took another rest day, I'd do it. And people look at you like, what? There's 4 other people here waiting for you and you didn't show up. So, you know, you just have to set your priorities. And that's paying your bills and taking care of your family.
And climbing would never have done that for you alone. Climbing alone would never have buttered your bread. It would never have been the...
Oh, it would never pay for my mortgage.
Yeah.
Is that what you mean? No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Even at your level, even at your, you know, the legacy that you've built as a climber, even at that status, climbing full time is not, like, it doesn't butter your bread. It's not going to support you.
No.
Even today in modern day.
There's a few exceptions, but generally no.
Yeah. Interesting. I think that's important to know. I think
Alex Honnold's
he's
a multimillionaire
yeah,
from climbing.
But it's not just because of his performance.
No, it's because he's a celebrity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're a prolific route developer, especially in like the 514 range, especially like the Virgin River Gorge. You've established like a large majority of new 514s with the Salt Lake City crew out there. You drove 6 hours each way from San Diego for a long period of time to kind of chase that passion. And I would say you've developed like more rock than some people probably will ever climb. What is it about discovering new routes, new areas, and this passion as a route developer that has captivated you all this time?
It's really inspiration. You got to chase what inspires you. So if that kind of stuff doesn't inspire you, don't do it. It's not important. Climbing new routes was always really interesting to me because you take something that no one's done before. They haven't set where there's anchors or where the route might go, which crack systems might you link. And so it's really, to me, it's an artistic thing and it's an inspirational thing. So that's what I love doing about it. I don't think I would have been the climber I was if I didn't have new routes to do. And it forced me to climb hard because I would come upon some amazing line and I would look at this thing and think, man, this is, I don't know if I can do this. This is really hard. And then I'd finally rise to the challenge and be able to do it. So, and being inspired by the whole process. So I think inspiration is real important. If you're not inspired to do things, then try to find something you're inspired to do.
Yeah. And you had said, like, if it doesn't inspire you, then it's not for you. Do you, I mean, for you, route development was a huge part of your climbing experience. Do you feel like people who aren't developing routes are missing a portion of the climbing experience in a way?
Not really. It may not even inspire them. They might just enjoy bouldering, and that's what inspires them. That's what they love doing. So they're not missing out on anything. It's just subjective. You miss out on appreciation. You don't appreciate what goes into it, but that you don't miss out on sort of an experience that you could generate yourself. And
if it didn't inspire you in the first
yeah,
place. Yeah. What about this nature of like, I talk to a lot of route developers, and I would say a lot of them are just doing it not selfishly, but not specifically for other people. But it's also like in its nature, putting up routes is a give back to the community in a way, especially after time. Like, was that ever a motivating factor of like, man, I'm leaving it like a legacy, I'm making routes that people can climb? Or was it very much like, I have a vision for a style and a difficulty of climbing that I can't find, and so I'm going to make it exist?
it's a little bit of everything. Part of it was I was a professional climber, to a degree. Not, it didn't pay my bills, but it paid for all of the gear that I did new routes with. So a lot of the bolting and all the stuff, all the gear that it takes to do that, I would fund out of my income as a climber. So I really didn't make anything at the end of the day as a climber. I put it all back into climbing. That I like doing because it made sense. It wasn't so much money that it really made a difference, but it was enough money to pay for all these routes. They're expensive. Each bolt's like $5, probably a lot more now, but with a stainless hanger, a stainless bolt, and drilling it, the drill bit that wears out, and the drill that eventually wears out, and all the ropes and all that kind of stuff. So
What about like the inspiration for putting the routes up in the first place? Like, was it like a mixed bag between like, I know I'm giving back to the community, or was it like, I want this route to exist because I need to climb something really hard?
it starts out as I need to climb something really hard, and I want to find that jumbo love or whatever that mega king line is. I want to find it and do it, hopefully. And then after a while, you realize that you have to create warm-up routes. There's a lot of other routes to do, that people are going to be climbing these routes, so you want them to be good quality. And it's not an altruistic thing where you're just going out there and slaving away for the community every day that you climb, but it's a combination of for yourself and knowing that other people will enjoy it too.
Yeah. How do you feel about climbers coming into an area, establishing a single line, and then leaving, versus kind of what you've been doing is you show up, you set up a whole crag, make sure there's a trail, you do the whole kit and caboodle, and then move on? Do you like, are they just different styles? Do you find them both acceptable, or do you think people have a responsibility to develop crags as well as routes?
They don't have a responsibility. They need to do it responsibly, though. If let's say that you go to some crag and you set up a route and it's just god awful dangerous because there's just loose rock and everything that you could definitely fix if you spent some time on it, cleaned it up. But you just leave this ugly, dangerous route that no one wants to climb, and you've taken up that real estate that might have been a good climb for someone if they actually put the work into it. So that's kind of not being responsible with the resource. But if you just go to an area and put up one route and leave, and it's a good route, it doesn't matter. It leaves the other routes for other people to do someday. I mean, we had sort of a ranking system on our routes: first round, second round, third round draft pick. And we would go and try to do the first rounders, and then we would do the second, and we would eventually leave an area knowing that there's still a whole bunch of routes left, but they're in the priority, they're not as much a priority for us, but it's good because you leave it for other generations to do. And then they become invested in the area. And so that's good.
So there's an art to almost leaving it slightly unfinished.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
exactly.
Cool. I like that. What about like the unsung heroes of development? I think that you've spoke about this at length, is, you get recognition for these routes and these crags that you've developed, but it's a huge group process, and there's like a big community involvement in, making these things become kind of what they are. Are there any like people or, steadfast climber partners that have been along this journey with you in development that you'd like to shout out, or maybe just talk to a little bit about those people behind the scenes that kind of are a part of this process?
Oh, for sure. A lot of times back in the day, let's say it's a 513 or something I'm working on in Joshua Tree, and my name would be on the first ascent, but the names that aren't on the first ascent are my partners that couldn't remotely climb that hard, that would still get up at 4 a.m. every morning and go out there with me and make these drives and belay me and be patient. And, I was almost like a workaholic out there, where it was like a sun up, first light to end to last light situation with Randy, hiking back in the dark every day. And as I look back on my climbing life, and I realized these guys were soldiering away with me, and it's amazing that some of them would just stick with me and keep doing that. And so I had a friend named Glenn Swenson who had got in an accident in the Army, and he was basically disabled with his thumb jacked up. So he could only climb certain routes that cracks went certain ways because of his hand. And he went out there just tons of times with me, and super reliable. A lot of these guys were incredibly reliable, on time. We would get up at crazy hours, and yeah, it's just. So what I started doing is at some point in my life, I realized these guys are just as important to the first ascent as I am. So I would list everyone that has something to do with the first ascent. And therefore, there was a route in Baja that we did. It was just 1,000-foot free climb called Orion Rising. Brian Spiewak started that route with Chris Hubbard and Diego Aldretti. And then they invited me along because they thought I could free it. So anyway, it became this kind of group effort. And the first ascent list is about, 12 people long. And it's almost ridiculous that we put that many people, but all those people had something to do with it. They weren't all the ones that went from the bottom to the top.
Mm-hmm. But they were critical pieces of the puzzle.
Yeah. Oh, and then my friend Jorge Visser was super reliable. When I would go to the VRG, he would come from a nearby town, and we would say meet at 10. And he would come one side of the freeway and park his car, and I'd be on the other side of the freeway. We'd pull up simultaneously. It was like clockwork. And we had this routine down. And so, I made a lot of good friendships with some guys that were super cool.
That's cool. Have you ever struggled with like a balance of recognition? Like, is there ever been like a partner or a conflict where it's like, there's a tension between like, oh, Randy's getting the attention, but like, I'm also a part of this, like, and there's like a struggle between like someone trying to make a name for themselves, but like there's a spotlight challenge. Like, do you know what I'm trying to get at all?
Mm-hmm.
Like, well, talk to me about that and how you've experienced that tension between partners sometimes.
Phew. It exists, not too much, but I've seen it, in my experience a little bit, especially when I was getting older and I'd have younger guys climbing with me. And a couple of guys I can think of they want to do a first ascent that generally I brought them to, like I've been working on an area, I've got a route, and I bring this guy. I remember he kept wanting to send it before me, and it got competitive between us. It was getting kind of weird, I thought, because it was sort of my route that I had, figured it out, cleaned it, and bolted it and all that. And then he's up there going, yeah, I think hope I'll get the FA this try. And I'm thinking, whoa, now we're in a competition. But it's actually kind of fun because it gave me a reason that I had to step it up a little bit for being the old man. But I think in general terms, I've gotten a lot of recognition for what I've done. And some of the partners that I've had haven't gotten as much recognition as maybe they deserve. So that, there is that dynamic. Part of it is I would write articles for climbing magazines back in the day. So my name naturally went more to the top of the list of people's attention rather than some guy who was reticent, who never wanted to report anything. And I go back and forth between wanting to expose areas that are really cool and show everyone, and also not talking about areas. They're still secret areas that I've climbed at.
Yeah. So talk to me about that. How do you decide when to make an area or a route public versus keeping certain ones still off the radar?
It's a balancing act. One of them is having all your gear there in position to clean the routes, bolt them, do the first ascent stuff, and not wanting someone show up and taking your stuff. There's that. There's one to do the routes first. There's that aspect of it, sort of the selfishness. There's the access issues. Maybe you're going through private land to get there, and there's some weird access problem where if it blows up to a big area, then it would just be over for everyone. And then we'll take people out, one by one. And there could also be other locals that I've stumbled upon areas where I've done new routes, and the locals there don't want it talked about, and I respect it. So if someone brings me to an area and goes, "Hey, come here and you can do some new routes, but we're showing it to you, we don't want you to talk about it," then I won't say anything. And then there's also, once you let the genie out of the bottle, it's out of the bottle. So you can enjoy those days where you feel like Robinson Crusoe and no one's on your island. I mean, Jorge and I were up at Clark one day, and we saw this car drive up, and the car stopped at our parking area, and the guy hiked up the trail towards the crag, and we felt like, we felt like we were watching, I don't know, the white man come in, like sailing ships back into the new world. Like, who are these guys? What is going on here? Who knows we're here? But it's fun to be out there and have no one there. I like the solitude of climbing. I'm not into these massive scenes where there's 30 people and their dogs at the base. I mean, that's okay, because that's okay for some people, but that's not where I prefer to be.
Oh, I 100% agree. I think that's the biggest thing that turns me off from sport climbing is the crowds and the people. Like, I love the solitude found in multi-pitch trad climbing, especially kind of like getting into the slightly above moderate stuff. There's just not a lot of people doing those routes. So you're pretty much guaranteed to be there alone, or the person you're with has such a specific level of skill set and like objective that you have so much in common that you're always like, man, this is so cool. We're out here together. You both agree on so much. So I've met really cool people doing that.
I mean, if we went climbing, we could go somewhere today. We know there's no one. And that's what's beautiful about climbing still. It still has that. Surfing, not so much.
Yeah. There's only so many waves,
Mm-hmm.
only points. On this topic of new route development, I think at least the area that hasn't got a lot in attention is you just kind of mentioned it, but the area in Baja.
Mm-hmm.
Is it just that one route that you guys did, or was there a crag or an area that you developed?
It's a north-facing wall, which at its shortest point is maybe 500 to 600 feet, and at the tallest point is 1,000. It goes up a steep hill and gets from shorter to taller, and then shorter at the end, at the very top end, and it's split by crack systems. It looks like the Needles.
Wow.
Looks like Yosemite, Joshua Tree, and the Needles got together and had a baby.
It's granite?
Yes.
Okay.
It's really good granite. And my friend Brian Spiewak, who's one of the most reticent route developers I've ever seen, this guy will literally slave away for weeks on end and make a classic 5/8, say in San Diego County, that requires digging out tons of dirt, doing tons of reconnaissance and rerouting, and just like his attention to detail on it, and not stopping until it's perfect. Some of these routes have become just ultimate classics for people to do that are 5/6, 5/7, 5/8 climbers. So the amount of effort he's put in to these climbs is phenomenal. And very selfless, really. Brian showed me this area in Baja, along with Chris Hubbard. We ended up doing probably 20 routes there. Maybe the longest one is 10 pitches, and the shortest one is 5 pitches.
Cool. Trad?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, trad and sport combined. There might be a mostly trad and then a sport pitch, maybe an arete.
Yeah.
But not all sport. Nothing is a pure sport climb there.
Are you able to say what the area is called?
Yeah, it's on the north face of El Gran Torno Blanco.
Okay, sweet. How far is it south? Like how far down the Baja Peninsula is it?
Not far. It's about 100 miles south of my house in San Diego.
Okay.
So it's not that far. You drive down through Tecate, which is the border crossing. Then you head east to a town, I believe it's La Rumorosa. And then from there you head south on dirt roads for 20 miles.
Any cartel activity you got to be aware of?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. How do you mitigate that risk?
Travel during the day.
Mm.
Don't travel in flashy vehicles. Don't
No Sprinter vans.
no Sprinter vans, no jacked up monster 4x4s.
Yeah.
Just kind of a modest car.
And are you doing day trips or are you camping out there?
Oh, we would have a day trip routine Brian and I called the Mexican beatdown, which is how we get up at 2 a.m. Leave my house at 3. We get it to the park and ride where we'd meet at 4. From there, we'd leave. We'd get to the parking area at first light, hike in, climb all day, and then come back at night. And it was just a brutal long day.
Yeah.
Because the hike in was an hour and a half.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
It's a downhill hike. We could do 1 hour in, 50 minutes if you're going fast, and then say an hour and a half out.
Yeah. Interesting. Sounds like a cool place.
It is. It's super adventurous, amazing climbs. I'll slowly start publishing topos of it because it needs to be climbed. These routes are fantastic. They're as good as some of the routes are like romantic warrior quality.
Okay. How are you scouting routes? I know you've recently been using your plane to scout routes. Was that the reason why you got your pilot license?
No, I got my pilot's license for a different reason.
What for?
I would go down to Baja on surf trips, and I felt like I would go down there with my friend who was a pilot in his plane. And sometimes we're in really remote areas, situations where we could get hurt. And I thought I should learn how to fly so I could fly the plane back if we had to. And then aviation is just a rabbit hole that you get involved in. It's really interesting.
Would you say the Earth felt larger or smaller after you were?
Oh, smaller.
Smaller?
Yeah. It's a time machine.
That's cool. Because you can just get places way faster. No commercial flights, no security. Like, how fast can you be? If we were to leave the house right now and you were to go get in your plane, I don't know what, like an hour to be up in the sky? Less?
Oh, to be up in the sky here? We're 10 minutes from
10
the
minutes
airport.
from the airport, yeah.
10 minutes from the airport, 10 minutes to walk through the gate and do the pre-flight, 15 minutes for the run up. So that's 35 minutes.
Yeah.
We'd be in the air.
Wow. That's freedom. That's really cool. And so the scouting of routes came out as a kind of like a secondary from you're in the air now and all of a sudden you're looking around and you're just like, well, what's that? What's that? Yeah.
Especially around San Diego. And I still have a lot of crags that I know about there, but they just become farther and farther to hike to. We were at the 2.5 hour mark where we would hike 2.5 hours each way to climb at this crag, but this crag was spectacular.
Wow. Yeah, access just becomes a barrier after a while. How far are you willing to walk in?
The hike, which I never really enjoyed before, became part of the process. And some of these hikes are spectacular. They're actually good hikes.
I could resonate with that. I mean, I talk to people about climbing here in Red Rock, and they're a very common thing is like, but those approaches. And I'm like, it's part of the experience. It's so beautiful. And like you're scrambling, you're going through the rocks and the creeks and walking by pools, and you're getting all this elevation before you even start climbing. Like it's part of the adventure and the experience. I definitely resonate with that.
Yeah, I think as I got older, I got more. I would appreciate the hiking more.
Before we continue, you probably haven't heard, but overalls are coming back, and Livezen makes the most functional and stylish overalls on the market. They offer 2 types of material, the heavy-duty flex canvas or the lightweight, flexible, and durable EcoTrek that is made for movement in the mountains. Most importantly, these technical bibs come with 11 functional pockets, pens, phones, wallets, keys, beers. Livezen's overalls has a place for them all. Trust me when I tell you, Livezen's overalls are the outdoor apparel you didn't know you needed. And there's a 30-day money-back guarantee, so you can buy them, try them, and if you still don't like them, they will give you your money back. Right now, you can get 15% off your next pair of Livezen overalls by using the link in the description below and code TCM15 at checkout. That's the link in the description below and code TCM15 for 15% off at checkout.
You've been struggling with kind of a debilitating, it's a disease, right? Talk to me about that. What is it called and how has it manifested itself?
It's a disease called hallux limitus, and it turns into hallux rigidus. And hallux is your big toe. Hallux limitus is when your big toe, you have arthritis in the joint and you get bone spurs growing on top of your foot. right at the toe joint to try to physically limit the motion. It's your body defending itself. And after that disease advances, it turns into rigidus where you can't bend your toe. But it's very painful. So I can't climb, can't hike. So that's why I appreciate hiking so much now, because I can't do it. But I was appreciating it during when I could do it. So it's changed a lot in my life until I get some surgeries, which are rather not go into how complicated the options are, but there's some options and they're not all very good.
When did it start manifesting?
Oh, I had it for years. I didn't know about it. I only knew about it around October 2 years ago, like 2 years ago today, where I actually got it diagnosed by a podiatrist. And from October through December, it was downhill fast. I couldn't stand the pain of being in climbing shoes. I have to have very specific type of footwear so that my feet are not uncomfortable, and with carbon fiber inserts. I surf with booties that have carbon fiber, that I put carbon fiber inserts in there. But I can do board sports like surfing.
Okay.
Because my feet are flat. So if there's any people out there that have experience with this, especially surfers who've had big toe fusion or climbers with big toe fusion, that's one of the fixes, is to fuse your toes. The other is an implant in the toe joint. Just reach out to me, because I'm trying to find other people who've had this, who've gone through the procedure, and see if they can still surf. Like, for example, with a fused toe, you can't bend your toe at that point.
How much range of motion do you have now?
I don't know, 10, 15 degrees in each direction.
Wow. And
10 degrees in each direction, I'd say.
Yeah, I'd say that even that helps walking, right?
Right.
Yeah. Because I saw you, I mean, I have very limited exposure so far, but it seems like you've been walking around pretty decently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can walk around the house fine.
Okay.
For a while, but I ice my feet every day, 3 times a day. So I iced them this morning at 5 a.m. for quite a long time, and then I'll ice them later on tonight.
Yeah.
And so it's just managing it.
And so climbing and hiking is off the table at the moment.
Completely off.
Wow. And that's happened since 2 years ago. So it's relatively recent.
My last climb was Leavitt to Beaver with Tim O'Neill in December 2 years ago.
Wow.
18 months ago, or not 18 months, 22 months ago.
I've been workshopping this idea of climbing pillars, like the reasons why we climb. And so far, I think 3 have kind of stood out: performance, adventure, and partnerships. Kind of the reasons why we chase the sport. It seems like I guess I won't answer the question for you. Rate them in order of importance.
Adventure is
Adventure,
one.
performance, and relationships.
Adventure, relationships, and then last would be performance.
Really?
Yeah.
I would have done it the other way. I would have guessed the other way.
Oh, well, that's my ordering. I'm really motivated by adventure. I think that's great. And with that, you get your partnership. So that comes second. Performance is a byproduct of that, because you can choose your level of performance too.
Now, you would correct me if I'm wrong, but you had mentioned that even if you got the surgery and you were able to, let's say, climb at like a 5-10 level, you had mentioned that you would question whether or not that would even be something worth your time or something that would inspire you to do. Is that true?
I used to think that when I stopped being able to climb harder, I would stop climbing. So at 14B, which is the hardest I ever climbed, that eventually I started surfing more, and I couldn't climb 14B because I was too fat, which is kind of in quotes, because the definition of fat in climbing is different than
5'14" fat and 5'10" fat are a little different.
So I was not able to climb that grade, even though I was young enough to do it, and because I had other interests. I kept climbing because I would find the adventure. See, that's what I realized. Adventure was more important, because I would find these new things to do, and partnerships, and to hang out with my friends. And so I kept climbing. Now that I've hit this roadblock, and I may be reduced to 5'11" if I have my toes fused, and I don't know if I can get joy from that. It's hard to say. I do miss climbing a lot. Like, it was the best source of exercise I had. It was a great social thing, and I got a lot of friends in climbing. But I can't answer that question now, and I used to think I could answer that question.
So if performance is the third pillar, why is it such a hard thing to try to understand that it might be something that's worth your time if you could still have an adventure and go hike and climb a 5.9 or a 5.10 as like, why is that a hard thing to conceptualize enjoying if performance is the lowest tier?
I think it's two reasons. One is there's other things I want to do. I don't mind being a beginner at stuff, so I learned hydrofoil surfing, wing foiling, these other things that I'm working on. And so I want to get better at those. I'm never going to get better at climbing from what I was. And then climbing is always going to be something that I was best at, better at than these other things. And it might be a bitter pill to swallow to degrade too far down from being quite good at it to being pretty damn mediocre at it. So it's hard to say what it'll be like after I get this surgery done, which is 2 surgeries because it's 2 feet, both toes. And how old will I be at that point? I'm 65 now, so maybe I'll be 67 when I recover from that, 68, 69, 70. I don't know how old I'll be. And do I really want to continue climbing? I don't know. I can't answer that now. It'd sure be fun to get back on the rock.
How does that feel to be in that position?
It sucks.
Yeah.
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 How have you been dealing with that kind of the mental struggle and the identity crisis, I guess, that comes with it?
I think one of the hardest things is not being able to exercise the way I want to exercise. Because I'm not a good guy about getting on a Stairmaster or something like that, or a Peloton. I have a Peloton. My wife uses it every day, but I am not that motivated. So it doesn't get me from A to B. It doesn't really do anything for me other than give me exercise. So I really miss the exercise. That's hard to deal with. And then just missing the act of climbing, that's hard to deal with.
And so even if you were to get into this like 5.9, 5.10 realm, you're almost living in the shadow of the experience that you used to have.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Life is what happens when you're busy making plans. I heard someone say that, and it makes sense because you have planned what you want to do, and then certain things happen. Injuries where your body gets modified. I had a wrist injury in '94 that changed my climbing. So the older you get, the more modified you get. Some finger injury that now is giving you problems, or in my case, my toes. So whatever you have to be able to accept and move on from there were times where I would just, be flying my plane, just going along and just crying, but that doesn't do me any good. That doesn't get me, because I have a lot of time to think when I'm flying, say from here to San Francisco or something. So I try not to think about it too much, but I think about it every day. Yeah.
That's tough. I'm sorry you're going through that.
I still have a pretty good life. A lot of people would say, hey, I'll take that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So I can't complain. I really can't.
I understand.
I'm still happy.
Yeah.
It's just hard.
Yeah. I understand your desire for progression. I think that I resonate with that for sure. It's like, well, what's the point of me putting effort into this if I can't see some sort of progression? And if all I'm gonna experience is regression, and again, like that, always comparing myself to who I used to be, it's almost like more painful than it should be.
I think you look at something like an NFL quarterback and you see these guys that retire and they just can't let go of it, because being an NFL quarterback is probably being one of the best athletes in the world at what you do, the most spotlighted sport position in the world. And these guys, sometimes they play too long, and they just shouldn't be on the field anymore, but they can't let go of it because that's the one thing that they were so good at. And it's hard to be a guy who's, so good at what you're doing and then not have that anymore. So
definitely becomes a part of your identity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's hard. You got to move on. be grateful for what you have.
What about this? So there's like a bell curve of performance, I think, as humans, because we age. When did you peak at a certain point and then it slowly starts to kind of taper off? When did you feel that taper start to creep in? When did you were like, holy crap, like I might have just climbed the hardest I could climb, or, I see the bell curve starting to go down the other way. Did you have a moment like that?
Not a moment, but when you're on the top of that curve, it's a slow.
It's
very
slow, right?
Yeah, so it's not a moment. It's more like a period of years,
like a decade or something.
I'd say I was in my best climbing shape in my mid 30s.
Okay.
Early to mid 30s, and there was a route up at Clark called Wall of Glass that I did. It was 14A, and there was an extension to it I called Jumbo Glass. That was going to be 14C. I was certain of it. That was my next step from 14B to 14C. And it was a really long route, and it was brutally hard, and it was going to be really good. I really was psyched on it. And I sat below that wall. I worked on it for a while. And at some point I realized to do this route is going to take complete devotion. I was maybe say 35 at the time. I'm going to have to hone my diet down. I'm going to have to work out like I've never worked out. I'm going to have to come out here for who knows how many days, 40 days of working on this route over a period of years if it takes that. So that was my challenge, was Wall of Glass or Jumbo Glass. And after a while, I realized, I just don't want to spend my time doing that. I have a wife. I don't want to just become a slave to this route and not be around home. I've got a business. I've got surfing that I want to get better at. I've got these adventures and places. I want to go to Indonesia, go surfing. I want to go to some crazy places. And am I going to be able just to devote myself and my physical training and all this to this route? Now, 14C might not be that hard to someone who climbs 15C, but at the time, for that year, for that era, it was quite hard, and I didn't think I could do it. I mean, I thought I knew I could do the route. That's not what I was wondering. I just didn't think that I wanted to have my life make that turn.
Yeah, it was a sacrifice you weren't willing to make.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And I realized it. I just sort of like, well, this is it. And I got to get someone on this route. So I told Chris Linder about it.
Yeah. Was that hard for you? Or was it, the same decision with the letting go of high altitude? You just knew, you're like, okay, I'm setting my priorities once again, and I know exactly which direction I need to go.
No, it wasn't hard.
Yeah.
At some point you're going to climb as hard as you can, and then you're not going to climb as hard as you can. And I devoted a lot of effort to climbing as hard as I could. I reached that point. I saw where it was. I knew my limitations. I didn't think I was better than I was. So I kind of realized that was the one I probably wasn't going to do.
Yeah. That's interesting. It's such a turning point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. To have a vision for I know it's there.
Oh, I'd done all the moves.
Yeah.
Except for, I've done all the moves. I just hadn't linked big sections together. I hadn't made enough progress to say, hey, I could do this in 15 days. It was more like 40 days, 40 days of projecting it. It means a lot of trips there.
What's the longest you've projected a single route?
I think Planet Earth in the VRG, it was my first 514.
How many days?
I don't know. I don't remember. But I named it Planet Earth because I figured I drove around Planet Earth. That's how many miles I put on my car to go back and forth to the VRG.
That's why you called it?
Yeah.
Wow. That wasn't the first 514, or was it the first 514 that was established?
No.
Okay. Who has the claim to that?
I don't know. Is it Scarface maybe?
Okay.
Scott Franklin?
Okay. Interesting.
That's what I think. It was a hard 14A. Never been downrated. If anything, people think it's harder than that. So I was happy. That was a solid 514.
Yeah.
That was a big effort for me. It took seasons. So I knew that I could do this route, but I finally got smart with climbing, because I used to just bang my head against these projects until I did them. And with Planet Earth, I realized I'm just going to take some time off of the route, get a better base, and then come back. And I would do that and go out, go away from it, come back, go away, come back. And then I did it.
Did you ever find a digression with the more time spent away from it? Or every time you came back, it just got a little easier, a little easier.
Well, you're unfamiliar with the moves sometimes, so maybe your first or second burn, you're remembering some key micro beta that you had forgotten. And then once you sort that out, then you're feeling better. But at first, you don't feel better.
Yeah, that makes sense. Brush off the cobwebs real quick.
Yeah.
I want to. You've had lots of experience climbing really hard. I want to know why hard climbing performance is so intoxicating, and why you feel like these successes are so the success fades so quickly after success.
On planet Earth, I was happy for a week after I did it. Most of my climbs, even big projects, when I clip the chains and lower down, I'm already thinking of the next one. So it's really odd with sport climbing in particular. I think mountain climbing, big wall climbing is different. You've done a thing, whereas a sport climb is more like a physical performance. And there's actually a pain factor that some people don't realize is in hard sport climbing.
A pain factor?
Yeah, where you're climbing through pain, like a pump that won't go away, or maybe even mental anguish, where you're so far below on a long endurance route, and it just is mentally hard to get through all that, the pain of the pump and the strenuousness. So it's not the pain in the normal sense, like someone is like, I don't know, cutting you or breaking a bone, but the pain of serious uncomfort, to the point of maybe you're almost throwing up, you're trying so hard. So to be able to work through that and get to the top without hanging on any of the gear to make a successful red point is kind of it's a physical mental process where they're both combined. You're not thinking about anything else at your laundry, your business, nothing else is going on, but you're just focused in your mind of managing the pump, being smart with the moves, not worrying about the runouts. The whole thing is just a very complete experience, but it's really in the moment. And so once that moment is gone, you just want more. It's almost like a drug, I would think.
So it's the process of trying super hard.
Yes.
And the better you get, the harder you can try.
Well, I don't know if it's the harder you can try, but you realize you can try harder. What I would generally try to do when I'm climbing is, if I'm doubting myself or I'm having any sort of thoughts about whether I can succeed or not, some red points I know I'm going to do. I'm just ready for it. And maybe it's a couple letter grades below my limit and I know I can execute. But let's say it's something that's really hard, an on-site or a project, and I just try to think of myself like, hey, I'm going to put on a good show. Not really a show for anyone necessarily. Your belayer will see it, but just a show as far as I'm going to show up, I'm going to just give it everything and just see what happens. And sometimes you pull it off, and it's just it's a physical, mental thing that's just a complete package. But like I said, it only lasts for that moment, and then it's gone. Yeah. And you want more.
And you can't do the same route again because you've already done it.
Yeah, I don't repeat routes a whole lot. There's certain routes I've repeated quite a bit because they're maybe local and I think they're so good, but I don't want to do my 514. I don't want to go back and do my 514s a second time or a third time. Some of them I've repeated, but for the most part, no.
Yeah. What if this is it might be a hard question to ask. I'm trying to understand, like, what basic human performance attributes do you have to climb 513, 514, 515? Like, are there measurable things that the human has to be able to do to climb those grades? You know what I mean? Like, is there a certain level of finger strength, or is there a certain physical adaptation that you have to have? And is there like a particular thing you can assign each grade to?
With climbing, unlike, say, surfing, for example, you could see some overweight guy surfing and he looks unlikely to be an athlete, but he has that coordination and that center of gravity and that balance and that style and that flow and could be an awesome surfer. Climbers, you can't really fake it. So there's a certain physique that's pretty common with climbers, lean, a high strength to body rate. And you have to have a lot of, for the hard climbing, I think you have to have a lot of mental tenacity, because hanging on for that long and going through that whole process is hard mentally.
Would you say climbing hard is more physical or more mental?
It's hard to say.
Mm,
It's hard to say. I think it's half and half, maybe.
okay. Even though you're not dealing with like a mental risk aspect of like a run out trad climb or having to place gear. It's just the fact that your body is like, don't do this, but you're like, we're doing this. You're pushing yourself further past what your body kind of wants to do, because it's such a hard thing to try to accomplish.
Sometimes I would get to the top of routes and look down and see my chalk marks and think, can a human even climb that? That's an intoxicating thing about climbing. You look down at what you've climbed, and sometimes you're just amazed that humans can do it. Not like you're pumping yourself up, but just, I'm just another climber that can climb at that grade, but that's amazing that people can do that. It's pretty cool. But there's a huge mental thing just to keep at it, keep it together. A lot of mistakes people make is they do a one hang ascent and they think they almost have the route. And then you kind of realize that maybe that hang is going to keep getting higher and higher and higher and higher, and that you're still a long ways from doing that route.
Yeah, because resetting that endurance kind of button is a huge thing to get over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And sometimes you do from a hang, you're really pumped and you shake out for a second and you can do a move a certain way, but you can never link it that way. You almost have to get to that point totally gassed to find out a way you can do it totally gassed. There's certain ways that take more body tension or whatever. So you got to be smart. You have to figure out mentally, like your strategy, your mental toughness, and then of course the physical. And the physical, some guys are just super blessed with finger strength that is just unearthly strong.
Do you feel like you were given any sort of genetic superpower?
No, no, definitely not.
Just a blue collar climber?
Yeah.
That's cool.
I think with stemming, I had a genetic superpower with stemming.
Okay.
There was something in my mind that could just understand the leverage, and I loved it. So I think I was quite good at that, but the rest of the stuff, I just had to work my ass off.
Would you say you're more like predisposed to climb like a techie vertical, or do you love like overhanging climbing?
I love something that's say 10, 15 degrees overhung, where footwork is still very important. Not just thuggery, not just like hauling up on jugs of the Red River Gorge, but Virgin River style. I like that angle. Maybe not blasphemy wall, but more like planet Earth wall, a little bit steeper.
Just slightly.
Yeah, 15 degrees, I'd say. Yeah.
You have a quote here. You said, just because you're a good climber doesn't mean you inherently have more value than another human.
Mm-hmm.
Unpack that a little bit for me.
Seems obvious to me. It's just, there's people that are good at everything, or there's all different kinds of people good at different kinds of things, but there's no value as a human being as being a good climber. No more so than someone who's good at tennis or some other sport. Like there could be a world-class tennis player, but that person has no more value than the janitor that's working at the tennis courts.
What about like intra climbing?
What's that?
So you're comparing like a general population to climbers. What about inside climbing, like a harder climber versus someone who isn't climbing as hard? Obviously, like you said, I think this statement is a bit obvious.
Oh yeah, okay.
But we're talking about
I see more what you're saying.
Intra climbing.
Yeah. I mean, that still stands. I think the climbers that are the best climbers out there are the ones having the most fun. You could probably see some people on a 510 multi-pitch in Red Rock, and they're just having the time of their life. Their experience is just as good, valuable as your own experience. Neither one is more important. Now, the climbing world is going to recognize the famous climber more. It's obvious, because people like to follow people that do things and aspire to that. But, as far as value, there's no difference.
Yeah. I think it gets convoluted when you start to attach like your identity and your self-worth to how hard you're climbing, then it's like, well, you need to feel better than everybody else, because if you don't, then who are you? It gets kind of messy.
Yeah, I've had a good reflection on that. So we talked earlier about my toe problem and I can't climb. So now I'm not that guy anymore. I go to a wing foiling place where everyone's wing foiling and I'm just some average Joe. And I'm not the guy that everyone at the crag wants to go talk to. It's different. So I understand that dynamic. It's different, but there's no extra value for being that guy.
On like a general human sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd like to talk about the climbing industry and and how it's kind of grown. You've watched it evolve, from just a kind of a dirtbag counterculture to like a global economy, to kind of like the commercialism that it is today. Did you ever, when you were climbing like El Cap at 16, did you ever imagine that it would kind of evolve into what it has become today?
I didn't really think about it. Climbing seemed like everything to me when I was that age, climbing on El Cap. I wanted to be a rock climber for the rest of my life, and I loved doing it. It didn't surprise me when it started getting more popular. The climbing gyms, I think, have really expanded on that because they've brought it to you could be in Miami, Florida and be a climber because there's an air-conditioned climbing gym. So climbing has really gone mainstream. And it's not the same vibe at all as when I was a young guy climbing in Yosemite. A lot of that soul and independence and freedom and sort of an anti-authoritarian attitude is really gone. We're not anti-authoritarian. We're just sort of anti-authority because we were these young punks that felt like we had this awesome place called El Cap and we hardly ever even see anyone climb on it. We were just up there. So now it's totally different. It's crowded. It's commercialized. It's mainstream. There's regulations. There's a lot more people on the planet, competition for resources. So the whole planet has gotten different. Not just the sport of climbing, but everything seems smaller and more crowded.
Yeah. You've spent a lot of time as an athlete manager at Maxim. I'm hoping you can provide like a bird's eye view at what the internal ecosystem of the climbing industry looks like. And I'm grasping at straws here because I don't understand even what I'm asking about. But you're the closest person I've ever spoken to that has had one foot in the door, I guess, and has an inside look at kind of how it operates, how the businesses attract athletes, what that kind of politics are like, how commercialism works in climbing, and how that it has brought into like the world of athletes. I'm interested in like whether Free Solo and Alex Honnold was a catalyst for like a boom of commercialism in climbing. Do you understand kind of where I'm prodding and where I'm going with this question?
It's a huge question. I mean, I could go in a million different directions. I think I would start by saying that one of the things I always hear in the sport, whether it's the surfing industry or the climbing industry, is people saying, we need to grow the sport. And that's something that I always disagreed with. I don't think we need to grow the sport. The sport's growing. People want to earn money in it. They want to provide for their family and, maybe acquire some wealth. And people are in the climbing business for those reasons. I was never in the climbing business for those reasons. I always liked that climbing was obscure and that not very many people knew about it. And yet here I am, a guy who was a sponsored athlete for many years and then ultimately social media and athlete manager at Maxim. And so I'm on one side, I'm quote unquote growing the sport. And on the other side, I'm still the same guy that likes the obscurity and anonymity of climbing and the adventure of it. So, I mean, I see both sides of it. And also you should know that in Maxim Ropes, that was a small division of a big company, and most of their money was being made in industrial, marine products, and other venues other than the climbing business. So the climbing business was almost basically their smallest division. So it wasn't like working at the North Face or Patagonia or Prana, which are these big clothing gear companies that have a much bigger budget. So my perspective is from a smaller budget type company.
Is there an insider group of like the industry of climbing, like the athletes, the brands, like how small of a group of people would you say that is in the climbing community, at least in North America? Like 1,000 people? Is it less than that?
I'm just guessing 1,000. Sounds
1,000?
about right.
Yeah, because what I'm finding the more and more I expand into this podcast and into just athletes and brands, I'm realizing that it's so small. Like this niche of climbing is even smaller than I could have even imagined it.
Yeah.
And so to me, that just fosters like a competition for resources. And you've got all these people that are trying to like make their name in climbing, and there's only so much to go around. So I would imagine that would create, I don't know, like a level of politics when it comes to who's on the in and who's not. Do you have experience with that kind of political realm of athletes and who's on top and who's getting recognition and who's not, maybe who's allowed to be on the team and who's not? Like, how did you choose athletes, and how does that world work?
It's kind of like too many rats and not enough cheese.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's not that much cheese out there. The big companies, Arc'teryx, companies like that are big companies now. They've made a lot of money, and that's because they've expanded beyond. They've used the climbing industry to sell clothing to average people, and that's where the money's at. And so the farther you go down that road, the less core it remains. Whereas I was with a rope company, so all we're doing is making rope for climbers. I like that because we were dealing really with climbers and not trying to go out in the general population. But I mean, there's all kinds of issues. Everyone wants to be a sponsored athlete. The program I had was pretty limited on how many we could have. And I would tell people that are interested in that, first of all, don't try to be a professional climber. Try to earn your living some other way. But if you're going to, you have to be tenacious. You have to, if you send out a resume or an email or call people or try to make a contact with a company and they don't respond, it's not always because they don't want to. It could be there's personnel changes. It could be the timing's wrong. You need to be persistent if you really want to hook up with a company. I would see people who were very persistent, and I would have a list of people I want to get on the team that I would keep. And when there was opportunities, I would do that. But then maybe there's an opportunity, and all of a sudden, someone from another geographical area says, "Oh, we've got this big account," and they really want someone in their area, and so all of a sudden now we got to choose someone from New England or wherever, or the South, rather than.
So you have money dictating where the athletes are being chosen from?
That has a lot to do with it. Yeah.
Yeah. So talk to me about.
You want representation in different markets, right? And every geographical area is a different sales rep, different territory. And so you don't want everyone from California or everyone from Colorado.
Are there big money pulling the strings behind the scenes? Are there like big families, big investors in the climbing space that are kind of like dictating how things are run? Maybe in like small secular sections, like is there big money at play?
Not at Maxim Ropes. Maybe at some of these other companies that I've already mentioned that have, they're going public or what have you, and there could be some big influences there. And I'm sure I'm sure there's a lot behind the scenes that I don't even see. I'm just at one part of it. And I was a sponsored athlete too with other companies like La Sportiva, and Megalith and Bricker Labs, a number of people with Power Bar, Sanook. So I saw it from both sides. But I mean, I don't get the impression that there's certainly favorites. And if you're a rising star, people will recognize that. And it's not just a rising star. It's it's almost like a personality in today's market, not just the talent. There's underground guys that are better climbers than all these other people, and no one knows about them because they don't self-promote. no one else promotes them. They're not promoted by anyone else. And there's someone with a better personality who is hell-bent on being a sponsored climber, and everyone knows about that person. And a lot of it's what the individual wants. The money is minimal. So they're pursuing it really for their own reasons. I mean, I don't think, it's not like guys are fighting over $100,000 salaries. You know, I think they're just enough to make payments on their Sprinter van and buy some gas and maybe some plane tickets here and there. Maybe the plane tickets are bought by the sponsors. It's a big industry, but there's not a lot of cheese to go around.
Yeah. Do you think that will change and continue to grow?
I don't know. It's almost if it grows, it gets worse. The industry gets worse.
How so?
Well, I mean, look what the surf industry has done. The surf industry got so big, it almost just imploded on itself. And all these companies are ceasing to exist, and it almost cannibalizes itself. I don't think sports need to become popular to make the sport better.
But they do in order for the people who want to make money off of the sport.
Yeah. And that's why I always was grateful that I made money outside of climbing, because I never felt like I was making climbing big to make myself have more money in climbing. I was just in the real estate business, which is a business that every Tom, Dick, and Harry is in. You know, it's just everyone is in the real estate business. I can be the 100th best real estate investor in San Diego and make a comfortable living. I could be the 100th best climber in the world, and no one even wants to give me a free pair of shoes.
Yeah, no, for sure. That makes a lot of sense. Do you feel like, do you see like a future where like the soul of climbing and the business of climbing can coexist? Or do you feel like they cannibalize, or one cannibalizes the other?
I think with certain companies, they try to keep that going, that soul. But I also think that it's easily lost. It's by and large, a lot of it's lost today.
What main characteristics of the soul of climbing would you say have been lost?
Earlier, I mentioned just the sort of scrappy freedom, basic values that climbers have of just being independent-minded and not being followers. There's a huge amount of followers in the climbing world today. They want to pretend like they're worried about the climate, or they're worried about DEI or other stuff like this, and it just gets all confused with, it's just climbing. And that's the soul of climbing, is just that independence, that self-sufficiency, being on a big wall and carrying everything you need to protect yourself and to be successful, or just being on a trad lead somewhere and having everything with you and going from the bottom to the top and enjoying yourself with your company. And there's so much more in climbing now. If someone says something in social media and everyone jumps on them because they don't seem like they're towing the right line. And I think the soul of climbing is lost at that point. And we're seeing it.
We're bickering over things that don't even relate to climbing in the first place.
Mm-hmm. I never knew of my partner's politics ever when I was growing up climbing. We didn't talk about it. I was probably mid-30s before I started paying a bunch of taxes, before I started learning about politics.
Hey, where's all my money going?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then now I'm looking at it going, okay, what's going on here? But when I was young, that wasn't part of the conversation. I was just climbing with some guy because I liked to be with him, and he was available, and he's a solid partner. And nowadays it's so different, and it's part of our society.
Mm-hmm. It's sad that it has bled into climbing.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely, like I've had it spill over a little bit to this podcast, and someone was kind of commenting on my Instagram, just like, "Oh, too bad he's on one side," and I'm like, "Hey, man, no politics on this page. Never has a place and never will. This is your last warning," or whatever. And then he like started blowing up the comments, just like started DMing me, just like rapid fire, all this stuff, pick a side. And I just blocked him. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so toxic.
It is.
Yeah.
I just, I liked it better when it wasn't part of the conversation.
Yeah. People with too much time on their hands.
I think they're being fed. I think they're being controlled by, people are at each other's throats because the people controlling it like it that way.
Yeah.
And it distracts them from what's really going on.
How do you feel about athletes having like voicing their political opinions on social media and stuff?
I don't like it, general. I don't look up to athletes for political opinions. I might look up to a philosopher or an economist or a scientist about world views that I might be interested in. But just because you climb 514 doesn't mean that I care about who you vote for.
100%. Yeah, it feels forced. When I see posts like that from professional athletes, it feels forced. I'm like, were you paid for this? Like,
I think some of the companies that people are sponsored by expect certain things to be said.
That's wrong, in my opinion.
And that's real. I tell you, that's real. It wasn't at Maxim. Maxim was in my tenure, was very apolitical. And I guarantee you, we had people on both sides of the aisle because I knew them as friends and knew how they stood, but it was never part of the conversation.
It never should be.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's sad that it has to be like that these days.
Some people claim it has to be like that because it's so important, but it's, it's just a distraction.
Yeah.
With winter right around the corner, you need to start thinking about your base layers, and these are going to help. Hot Chili's has been the leader in technical performance base layers for over 30 years. Made from an innovative blend of polyester and spandex, they are designed to feel buttery soft like cotton, yet provide all the benefits of performance material, striking the perfect balance between warmth, comfort, and flexibility. I recently climbed drifting, a hard multi-pitch route that is notorious for being shady, cold, and windy. With Hot Chili's Micro Elite Performance base layers, I was able to stay warm at the chilly belays without overheating on my leads. And believe me when I tell you, these things are soft, like crazy soft. And there's a 60-day money-back guarantee. So you can buy them, try them, and if you still don't like them, they will give you your money back. Right now, you can get 15% off at Hot Chili's by going to the link in the description below and using code TCM15 at checkout. That's hotchilies.com/TCM15 and code TCM15 at checkout.
You seem to be a bit of a pioneer as an athlete manager in how you chose people for the program, specifically in kind of shifting focus from athletes that are climbing at the peak performance to people with more of a story to tell, people with a bit more of maybe skills in other areas like content creation and being able to present a story or a personality. Is that true?
I don't know if I'm a pioneer at that, but I was pretty early to do that.
And why, like, what was the reasoning behind that kind of shift in focus, and how do you see people like that benefiting the climbing community in the long run?
Well, it's part of the direction that the industry is going. And I wanted to have the company that I'm representing and working for to try to be well represented in the different areas. And let's use the word influencer. There's people who are influencers that maybe they're not hardcore climbers, but they love climbing and they're good at making content. And there's people receptive to having them be part of it. And maybe some of the other, I know some of the athletes, I was always a very hardcore athlete manager where I knew when people would call me up or write resumes, I knew the climbs that they were talking about. I knew how hard they were. I knew the reputation of the climbs. I knew so much about it because I was a climber myself. I always tried to stay true to that and have the best athletes and the most core people, regardless of whether they were well publicized or whatever. But there was a time where the influencers were genuinely coming on the scene. And I wanted to be part of that because I try to, as I get older, I try to keep an open mind because things change. You don't maybe like things that change, but they do change. So you got to go with the changes. It seemed kind of obvious that I think we made some good moves and the people were good, and the people who were on the team, sometimes the best climbers weren't the best team members because you would never hear from them until they want something. I'm not saying that as a generalization, but it didn't go hand in hand that you were a great climber and you were a great athlete to be on a team.
Well, I think also too, there's got to be some sort of marketability to you as an athlete. You need to be able to have content of you climbing, or you need to have, it really helps to have an audience. And so there's all these things that are kind of going into the decision-making process, I would imagine. And unfortunately, climbing hard is kind of not a novelty anymore. Like there's so many people that climb really hard.
I would like the hardcore guys that would come to me. There was a couple that we couldn't take on that I wish I had taken on early on when there was more of a chance. But we had, a guy like Marc-Andre Leclerc was one of our athletes, and he came up to us in the trade show, and he was just this understated, quirky guy, and I could just tell there was something about him that where he's the sort of guy that would do some huge, incredible climb and come back the next day and say, "Oh yeah, I was just out like checking out some climb," and not say anything about it. So anyway, I would come across some of these quirky guys sometimes, and Alex Honnold was one. Early on, we were one of his first sponsors. I think we were his first paid sponsor. And I just would recognize these guys and go, I love how hardcore these guys are. And I know I'm not going to hear much from them. We're just going to give up Mark a rope when he needs them. And I probably won't hear much, but I just feel good that we're helping him out.
These guys are doing something special.
Yeah. And we knew it, but so there was a part of me that loved doing that. Just helping those guys out.
Mm. Yeah, it's cool. It's definitely nice to have a diversity in terms of your athletes. Like you got the people like Marc-Andre Leclerc and Alex Honnold, and then you have like influencers and kind of like the vast in between. It's like there's room for all. It's just a matter of how you choose to diversify it.
Yeah, I wanted mountaineers. I wanted ice climbers, big wall climbers, free climbers, boulders. Well, boulders, not so much. We sell ropes.
Yeah, exactly. How many athletes would you say you kind of had at once on your team?
Oh, I would say probably average of 20 at a time.
Okay. And would you say that's pretty average for most brands, or do brands have bigger athlete teams?
Some brands have pages and pages of athletes on their website, and it was too much for me. It's a lot of work. Every person is work. So, and we can only spread ourselves so thin. We're not. It depends on what your product is. Ropes are relatively expensive, and it's hard to support, say, 100 guys with 100 people with ropes if you're a small company.
Mm-hmm. You're like, well, 100 ropes?
No, it's maybe 300 ropes a year.
A year. I just mean all at once. Sometimes you're like, oh, here's 100 ropes.
Yeah.
Oh, jeez. Yeah. Okay. So coming to the close here, I want to, we've talked a little bit about this, and some of this is tied to the climbing industry itself, but I guess climbing culture specifically, you've seen it change tremendously over the years. You've seen basically every major cultural climbing shift, from aid to the introduction of free, to the introduction of bolts and sport climbing, and the ethics that have evolved between the dissection between those two sports. Which one of the major shifts over the years do you feel like has kind of changed the culture of climbing the most?
The gym.
Just access to the sport.
It's brought Main Street to climbing. So someone has no idea about rock climbing, but they could walk into a climbing gym in Nashville, Tennessee, and they could look at it. Their kids are climbing on the wall, and they'd say, "Oh, I kind of get it. I understand it exists," and then it's just brought in just a whole different element. The gyms, for sure.
It's a gateway drug.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
It was for me. Started in a bouldering gym, then I went to a rope gym, and that was when the light bulb went off. After I learned how to lead climb, I was like, holy shit, this is what I'm going to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. The gyms are great, but they also have problems associated.
Yeah. So I've talked to some, I would call them traditionalists, anti-bolting, anti-sport climbing, anti-gyms. They're very much kind of myopically stuck in a version of climbing that doesn't exist anymore. It seems like this progression of gyms and sport climbing is just inevitable. It's just part of the progression of the sport. Do you see it that way, or do you see an alternate reality where like the core values of climbing and the risk ethos and the bold climbing like could have just been what climbing stayed?
I don't know what you mean by progression.
Progression of the sport, like it's inevitable that it ends up becoming what it is today, right?
Oh, I think so. Yes. Yeah. I mean, sport climbing was inevitable. Tony Yanero and I adopted sport climbing techniques when we first figured it out or learned about it way back in whenever it was, early 80s. And a lot of it wasn't well received by some of the other climbers who were more traditional minded, but we saw it as an obvious sort of, why would you climb up a rope and as soon as you fall, your partner lowers you instantly? Why not just hang out there for a second and see what the next move might have been? And that creates another opportunity to maybe keep climbing and then maybe put another piece in and hang and try to figure something out. So it just, there was this obvious progression that hang dogging, rehearsing climbs, and then eventually pre-protected climbs like bolted sport climbs would exist. And it's sort of like you had to bury your head in the sand if you didn't see that coming.
Yeah. Why do you think so many people did bury their head in the sand? Why was there such a division?
There was a lot of ego back in those days.
Tied to the way you climbed, the way you approached it.
Uh-huh. People genuinely believed that you shouldn't be doing it any other way. There's other people that were super good at the scary stuff, and they wanted to be that guy.
They wanted to be that guy, and anybody else that didn't do it almost
and they wanted to hold everyone else back. There was a lot of cheering on for people to fall on stuff back then. It's not like today where you go to a crag and everyone's cheering someone to make it. There would just be silence and just people wanting someone to fall. So there were some of it was ego driven. Some of it was just, they thought it was the way it should be done. And I'm not saying that any of that's wrong. It just to me, there was an obvious progression in climbing. And that's the same with gyms. And obvious, I wouldn't say progression, but let's say next step. So when gyms came out, I looked at it and said, okay, this is the new normal. And how it affects the sport, that's another story, but things like that are going to keep happening with the sport. And you have to keep moving with it. You have to be able to accept what people are doing, because just the way you did something doesn't always mean that's the only way to do it.
Yeah. Do you have a vision for what is next? What's the next gym? What's the next progression in the evolution of the sport of climbing?
Well, I think the deep water soloing is amazing. And even to have more of these deep water soloing contests, or maybe public gyms that are deep water soloing, because it's the only problem is you get wet and your chalk bag gets wet and your shoes get wet when you fall. But just being able to have that ability to climb. So maybe imagine, instead of falling into water, you could fall into giant pads where you wouldn't get hurt. And so there could be a climbing gym you would go in, it might be like Thunderdome.
Over a huge foam pit.
Over a huge foam pit. And people will be hucking off left and right, taking these 50-foot whippers into giant foam pits. And that, I could see something like that. It might be a little hard for
liability insurance is going to go up.
Yeah, stuff like that. But that's where my mind goes on stuff like that.
Okay, that's cool.
And then there has to be an easier way for, say, climbing gyms to cut down how much human labor is involved in setting routes. There needs to be a better solution to putting holds on the wall and setting routes.
It's too expensive right now?
It's like an ant farm, climbing gym, all these guys go up, they're hanging from ropes, they're swinging around, they're trying to screw holds in and figure out moves, and then someone's cleaning the holds off later on, and they're stripping the things, and there's just a ton of labor I think there could be something that eliminates that. Who knows, maybe artificial intelligence setting routes, where it figures it all out and someone just has a plan, and it's a robot packages all the holds in order, and there's holes and they're numbered, and you put them all in, and then that's your route. I mean, And so I'm thinking more in terms of artificial climbing as far as the future
gym
of climbing.
climbing.
Because really there hasn't been any advancement in footwear and not a whole lot of advancement in ropes or protection in the last, say, 30 years. So climbing is just sort of, at this point, is just performance. Maybe there will be some sort of bionic protection where you can just stick it like silly putty on a wall and then go, and then you wouldn't need bolts. I don't know. Maybe there's something like that.
Yeah, some sort of like a clean trad that's even better than what we have now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They would substitute for bolts.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know.
Interesting. Some molecular bonding.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. What about free soloing and its effect on climbing culture? I find this contradiction. So, we, at least in the digital world, we glorify Alex Honnold and his free solo attempts, and we made a movie on it and won Oscars. But then, we see people posting about their free solos on Instagram, and instantly it's just bombarded by hate and judgment and criticism. Have you experienced that kind of contradiction? And it's like in general, like the overarching effect that publicizing and commercializing free soloing has done to the community?
Well, free soloing, you can talk all you want, but when you get 30 feet off the deck and you have no rope, you're going to meet your maker. You're going to see God or something. You're going to have a reality check. So you haven't seen people falling off the walls and dying free soloing. There's been a few accidents, but nothing widespread like you would think. So I don't think Alex Honnold spawned a whole generation of people, lemmings, climbing up a wall and falling off and dying. I think that's the reality is you get 30 feet off the deck or 15.
You know whether or not you're going to do it or not.
And you're just like, I don't think I want to do this. So sure, there's going to be a few people here and there, but I don't think it's a big problem. I think it's a self-regulating thing.
Yeah, I wasn't really alluding to the fact that Alex Honnold is causing all these people to die. It was more like the contradiction from the public's reaction to glorifying someone like Alex Honnold, but then criticizing someone who's doing something similar. Like, you're risking your life. You're going to kill yourself. This is the stupidest thing ever. Like, how do you, have you seen?
It's like the no helmet thing.
Yeah, exactly.
We publish a picture and someone doesn't have a helmet, and then they start belittling you for publishing this picture of someone that should be wearing a helmet, or maybe they shouldn't. It's their choice. So it's just all part of that thing originally we talked about where there's all these sides people take and they argue about it. And it's just sad. It's sort of the death of the sport. It's not relevant. People aren't.
It's all distraction.
Yeah, it's all distraction. Someone wants to free solo and post, they should do it if they want. And people don't have to hate about it, but they just always feel like they need to say something, and they need to be on one side of it or the other. Either you're for it or you're against it. I'm neither for it nor against it. I don't free solo. I told you earlier I free solo easy stuff like 5.7s, sometimes more just for efficiency, but I don't free solo.
You chose not to have kids. Was that like a deliberate act, or was it something that like your life just didn't have time for?
Not having kids was deliberate. I was married in my 20s, late 20s, and my wife and I had talked about it before we got married, which is an important conversation. You don't want to get married and then, oh, should we have kids or not? And then your wife says, oh, I'd love to. And then like, well, I don't really want to. So no, it's in a conversation you have to have before you get married. When I was young, I was born in 1960. In 1968, a book came out called The Population Bomb. And it's kind of like all the doom and gloom sort of, it's along the same lines as the climate change stuff, where young people get so afraid of living their life and having kids and having a family because they're afraid of something they perceive and it's been told to them. And I'm not saying climate change is not real. I'm not saying the population bomb was not real, but a lot of stuff in that book didn't come to fruition, but it had an impact on me because I read the book as a young guy and I believed it. And that one of the things was they thought hundreds of millions of people were going to die from famine and starvation.
Because there were too many of us.
There are too many of us, and they had it all figured out how much agriculture could be produced and blah, blah, blah. And this is how we're going to control it, and sterilizing people. And I sort of just brought up in that mindset, and I remember it. I remember that book, and I thought to myself, well, I can't control the world, but I think there's enough people, and I can control whether I put any more out there. And it's kind of in my own way, it's a way of reducing my carbon footprint, because there's not another 4 Randys running around, because they'd make a hell of an impact. But it was just a personal decision, and my wife felt the same way for different reasons, but neither of us really wanted kids for our own reasons. Mine was the population thing.
I'm also in that same boat. Hannah and I have chosen that's not kind of the path we want to go. For me, selfishly looking forward to someone who has made that decision and is now kind of in the later years of your life, do you ever regret not having a kid?
No, I don't regret it. And I was, my mom got old, and I was the guy taking care of her when she was old. And I could see how important it was to have a kid who could make decisions for you and help and do all this stuff. But I've also seen families where the kids don't want to have anything to do with their parents, and it could be a heartbreak the other way. So there's no guarantees having kids is going to do anything for you eventually. So your reason for having them needs to be something other than that.
Just have a lot of them.
Yeah, just have a lot of them. Just yeah,
the odds are more in your favor. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, that's good to know. Yeah, I'd.
But no regrets.
Yeah,
I mean, but I'm not done living either.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see.
Yeah, that's another thing, I guess. As we get older, I think, at least for me, one of the biggest fears I have is kind of like being older and having regrets, looking back and be like, man, I wish I had done this, or I can't believe I didn't take that opportunity, or and that's been a driving force for me and how I live my life now. How would you advocate, or like, what advice do you have for someone to avoid being in that position when you're older?
Every day is basically a gift, and you can't let them go by. So do what you think you need to do what's going to make you happy, but think ahead to the consequences financially or whatever it is that may be there. But don't let days, weeks, months slip by and not do stuff. And, I've got this situation with my feet, and I think, oh, it's really sad. But then I look back and it's like, well, I did everything that I could have done. And so I have no regrets, even if that caused my problem. So you just have to seize every day and do what you can. And I let a few days slip by where I don't do stuff, but for the most part, I'm really trying to live life.
Do you have tips for not, because the common trope, like depression is built by living in the past and anxiety is built living in the future. I'd say presence is like what we strive for, and this kind of what you're talking about is to be present enough to live each day and to take action. Do you have tips on being present and like how we can stay not focused on the past or the future, being able to live now?
Yeah, I don't think about the past much. I mean, I think back or reflect back on things I've done and people I've done things with, but I don't dwell in the past. I really live in the present and the future. And the future from the standpoint of I like to figure out where I'm going and how to best get there and what steps I need to take today. So I guess really I'm thinking about today, like what can I do today, either to make today a great day or to get where I'm going tomorrow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think a big thing for me is like having a clear vision, a vision for where you want to be and what you want to be. Because without that, how are you supposed to make the correct decisions now to get to a specific place, right? If you don't have a vision and you don't have a clear picture of where you want to be or who you want to be, you end up just kind of like floating around and you let external factors decide who you end up becoming. I definitely try to avoid that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Live it. Live it up.
Yeah. Every day. Well,
but don't destroy your body.
Yeah. There's a balance to be had. Well, Randy, it was a pleasure. Yeah, I'm honored to be sitting down with you. You're such a legend, and it's been just an awesome time chatting with you. I appreciate you taking the time to fly over here.
Thanks for having me on your podcast.
Yeah. Where can people find you? You know, is there a place like you have a blog, you have a Substack, you know, where can people find you, follow your story?
Instagram is probably the best, at Randy Leavitt. It's RandyLeavitT, V as in Victor, ITT.
Sweet.
And you could DM me, or if you need to get in touch with me there, that's probably the best.